Data in our data models is useful only when it's being used to tell stories that are hidden in your data. We can design, develop, and optimize models to our heart's content, but none of it matters unless data is being utilized. In this module, we'll cover how to create reports, create dashboards, enhance reports for usability and storytelling, and identify patterns and trends. Let us begin. This lesson focuses on the creation of well-defined reports, which are used to tell the stories hidden in your data. In this lesson, we will cover how to add visual items to reports, choose an appropriate visualization type, format and configure visualizations, use a custom visual, apply and customize a theme, configure conditional formatting, apply slicers and filtering, configure the report page, use the Analyze in Excel feature, and finally, choose when to use paginated reporting. Let us begin. In this sublesson, we're going to talk about adding visualization items to reports. So right now I have a Power BI file open. And if we notice here down the left-hand side of the screen, we have the view pane. And currently I am on the report view. I've got a blank canvas right here where we'll put our visualizations. We've got the data view to show us the data that is over in our data model. And then of course we have the model view where we can take a look at the model we have available and behind the scenes in terms of how the relationships are built up. But that's not the focus. The focus is the report view. So let's go over and take a look here at what we have. So right now I am using the April 2022 release of the Power BI desktop. And with that, you're going to see on the visualizations pane right here that there are 40 visualizations that are out of the box with Power BI. So these are ones that come installed with Power BI. Also keeping in mind that right now I have all preview features turned on inside of the Power BI desktop, which actually in this release doesn't affect the number of visuals that are sitting here. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to go and build a basic visualization here. So I'm just going to go over first to my order date table. And I'm going to go down here and I'm going to select my order date calendar year. And we're going to see that Power BI is going to draw a visualization out. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and drop my total sales from my sales table here. So I've got a sales column here. So I just go sales amount. There we go. And we can see that a visualization has now been drawn out. Pretty basic, but this at least gets things started. And given that I have this in place, I could, if I wanted to, with the visual highlighted, given that there's the gray bars around the edges here, I could go ahead and change this to a table visualization just by clicking this right here. So then it changes the visualization like that. And really the subsequent sublessons we're going to go through are really going to go into a lot more detail in terms of how to configure and manage your visualizations. This sublesson was really about just how to go ahead and add the visualizations to your report and just to get you comfortable with the environment itself. So with that, we are at the end of this sublesson. In this sublesson, we are going to talk about choosing appropriate visualizations type. So what we're going to do here first is just go through a number of the different visualizations that are available inside of Power BI and discuss their use. Okay, so the first one we're going to take a look at is the table visual. And the table is a basic grid that contains related data in a logical series of rows and columns. The table itself supports 2 dimensions, and the data is flattened out, which means that duplicate values end up being aggregated when they're being put into the table. And you'll notice that there are headers for each one of the rows in the actual table itself. The matrix visualization is similar to the table, and the matrix represents tabular data in a grid-like format, and it also automatically aggregates data and enables you to drill down. The matrix displays data meaningful across multiple dimensions, so we end up getting columns and row headers in this particular formation, and we use it to gain quicker insights into our data. And we can also go ahead and apply conditional formatting into visualizations like this. And in some ways looks a little bit more like a traditional pivot table. And in Power BI, we also have a number of different bar and column charts that are available. So if we go to our visualization chooser here, we can see that there are 6 different bar and column charts. Let's just go ahead and choose maybe the stacked column chart to go ahead and start with and explain it first. And all of these visuals that are in the bar and column category will go ahead and present specific data across different categories in a stacked or clustered formation. And these are really good for doing comparisons or parts to a whole comparisons. And here also is an example of a clustered bar chart. And in Power BI, moving next to the line and area charts, we can see that we have a line chart, an area chart, and a stacked area chart. So let's just go ahead and perhaps move into the line chart and pull that one up here. And these visualizations are very beneficial because they can help you present trends over time or changes over time and perhaps distributions. And if we go ahead and take a look at one of the area charts here just to see the difference between the 2 different charts here, is basically the area charts are really just trying to give you a sense of the change in magnitude over time. Next up, we'll take a look at the pie, donut, and tree map chart types. So let's first go into the pie chart. And some of the characteristics of each one of these visuals is they're really good for showing parts to a whole. Here's an example of also the donut chart, and then we'll go ahead and let's pull up a sample of what the tree map actually looks like. One of the benefits of the tree map as opposed to the pie chart and donut charts, even though they're good for showing parts to the whole, is when we start getting too many categories or many categories on a pie chart or donut chart, it can really result in very small pieces of data. They're very hard to understand. And what a tree map will do is allow us to display this data in hierarchical sets or nested rectangles, which are a little bit better way to go ahead and visualize this data in certain situations over and above the pie chart and the donut chart. Next up, we'll talk about a couple of the combo charts here. So here we have a line and stacked column and the line and cluster columns. So if we just go in here, what these really allow us to do is compare multiple values on the y-axis. And what this allows you to do is make a quicker comparisons of 2 different categories on the y-axis. A line chart is a series of data points represented by dots and connected by straight lines that is used to show progression over time. And the stacked column chart displays numerical values over time to compare values between different groups represented through rectangular bars on the graph. And the stacked column chart also displays the bars divided into stacked bars that display the proportional values of another dimension. So we can really start mixing and matching these different visualizations through these different combo charts. So next up, let's show you what a card visualization looks like. So a card visualization is visual, just shows a single number in a rectangular box. And we can also enhance that a little bit by using the multi-row card. And this is similar to the card visualization, except the multi-row card visuals used to display single values, but in a group format or in a section. So we typically use this visual if we have multiple single values that we want to present in a report. Next up is the funnel chart, which is really good at showing a flow of information that has a sequence of connected stages. This chart communicates these are the health of a process we're tracking, with each stage of the funnel chart illustrated by a rectangle, which represents a percentage of the total. We typically use the funnel chart when your data is sequential through at least 4 stages, and also if the first stage is expected to be a greater percentage of the final stage. And this visual also helps in determining bottlenecks in your workflow. Next up, we'll take a look at the gauge chart, which is a visual which displays the minimum maximum current value against a goal or KPI. The line or needle on the gauge visually represents the goal or the KPI. The shading of the gauge and the value inside the arc represents the progress towards the value. Using the gauge visual when you want to measure progress towards a particular goal. The waterfall chart illustrates how an initial value is affected by positive and negative changes. The chart shows a running total as values are added or subtracted. The values are shown as bars on a graph with the direction of the bars representing negative or positive values. The bars are also color-coded, which allows users to quickly notice the increases and decreases in the data. The scatter chart displays the relationship between two numerical values. The scatter chart combines the intersections of y and x into single data points. This chart will display the correlation between two numerical values. If you want to add a third dimension, you can replace the data points with bubbles or circles, with the size of each bubble represented by a third dimension. Power BI also has a number of maps, so just the basic map visualization is used to map out data points that have a lat and long coordinates as their values. You can include a third dimension to the visual by representing the data points using bubbles or circles, where the size of each bubble is represented by the value of your third metric. So this is a basic map. There also in Power BI is a filled map, which looks a little bit like this. And the filled map is a visual display which allows you to show how a value differs in proportion across a geographic or region by the use of shading or tinting of patterns. And finally, we have the slicer visualization, and it is used, we have three different looks at the slicer visual. So we have the slider form of the slicer, we have the drop-down version right here on the right-hand side, and we have the list version. So you could use this slicer to go ahead and filter the data on your report canvas using any one of these mechanisms here. All right, so that brings us to the end of this particular section on choosing appropriate visualization types. In this sublesson, we're going to go into a little bit of depth on how to format and configure visualizations. Okay, so I am on the Power BI desktop, and the first thing we want to do is go ahead and give the visual focus that we want to go ahead and format. So as we can see here in my report view, right now the visual doesn't have focus. If it does have focus and I click in here, it'll have a gray border around the outside. That means that any of the formatting I'm going to do is specific to that visualization. If I click outside of it over here and that border disappears, that means now the report canvas has focus, and the things that you can go ahead or do to go ahead and format that will be specific to the report canvas. So maybe just to quickly show what that looks like. So with the report canvas having focus, I can go over here to the Format Your Page button, and we can see here that I've got a number of different cards that will allow me to go through and format this particular report page. So I could perhaps go to page information. If I want to rename this page, I can say overview, something like that. And now I've got my page name called overview. So that is formatting the actual report page itself, but we want to focus in on the visual. So what I'm going to do is give the visual focus like so. And what we're going to do is, first off, go back over to the add data to your visual pane here. And what we're going to do is go ahead and turn this into a cluster column chart. So we're going to put it back to that, which was the original default state, if you recall from an earlier sublesson. So that is the visual as it stands without doing any formatting. So I'm just going to go ahead and re-highlight that here. And let's just go through and take a look at some of the things we can format. So I'm going to go to Format Your Visual. We're going to see here there's two tabs on this. So in the new format pane, it's called Visual and General. So there are a couple different places we can get at for doing formatting. So what we'll do first here is I'm going to stay on the visual. And I can see that the x-axis is turned on. So at the card level, I can turn the x-axis on and off so we can see that the title disappears there. I'm going to go ahead and leave it on. Then I can go ahead and open up the card, and there's a number of different things that I can do around formatting it. So I can go into the title, for example, and maybe just turn it off. So if I want to go like that, I can turn this only the title of the x-axis off and do other things. So within these cards here, there are some subcards which we can go ahead and configure as well. So we got the x-axis, we got the y-axis, we got some here that are turned off. Right now they're not available for doing any configurations. Yeah, so we can go through each one of these things right here. Let's go over to the general one here so we can see the title. So here's where I can go in and maybe give this a little bit better title. Maybe I like sales by year better, so I can go ahead and enter that in. And then go ahead and maybe center it, give it a bold font, and do some other configurations there. So we'll close that one up. So a number of other different cards that we can go ahead and do some configurations on as well. If I want, I could also turn the tooltips off for this visual. So let me just hover over top here to see. We can see that I've got the tooltips here that are showing up by default. I could go ahead and turn those off if I want, so that when you hover over top, no tooltips will show up. If we turn them back on, we can go in here and add some, some additional configurations to the actual tooltips themselves. So in summary, what you'll notice is that at least for this cluster column chart, there are a couple different tabs we can get into to start configuring the visual itself. We got the visual and the general, which is just grouping the different properties together. And each visualization that we go ahead and set up over here. So if I was to go ahead and change this over to let's put it back over to the table here and go back to the formatting the visuals, we'll see now there are a number of different formatting cards that are available given the visualization has changed. So once again, I guess we can't possibly go through every way that we can format and configure every visual in Power BI, but this is a sense of where you can go take a look at that. So for exam purposes, this gets you going in the right direction, shows you some of the key things that you can go ahead and highlight. And if you really want to get down into some details, you can work your way through a number of these other cards as well. So with that, we are at the end of this sublesson. Okay, so in this sublesson, we are going to use a custom visual. So first off, what are custom visuals? Custom visuals are visuals over and above the out-of-the-box visualizations that are provided in the Power BI desktop. So as we saw in a previous sublesson, in the April 2022 release of the Power BI desktop with all the preview features on, there are 40 visualizations that are available by default. But what if one of those 40 isn't what you want for a visualization? You do have options. So custom visuals are available in the Microsoft App Source and are created by Microsoft and Microsoft partners. They have a PBI Viz extension, and some visualizations are certified and others are not. And if you want, you can create your own custom visuals, but to do that, you can use the custom visual software development kit that is provided for Power BI development. And just as a note, some organizations will block the use of custom visuals at the tenant level so that you will not be able to actually go ahead and use them. So let's go to the Power BI desktop and take a look. So I am here on the Power BI desktop, and per our previous sublessons, we had a visualization on the canvas here. We have this table here. Once again, I could go ahead and change it to a cluster column chart, if that's what we wanted, or I could actually go ahead and convert it to something else. But what if that something else isn't in the Power BI desktop visualizations by default? So what I can do here is click on these three little ellipses that says Get More Visuals. I can click on Get More Visuals, and then I am brought over to a host of different Power BI visuals. So I can see all the different visuals that we have available to us, any visuals that have been approved by your organization. So there's organizational ones, and we can see I have no visuals that have been approved by my organization, and we can see ones that are just app source only. So I'm going to go back over here to all visuals, and let's just suppose that we want to use a sunburst chart. So what I'm going to do here is just type in sunburst, at least get part of it typed in here, and we can see there are two different visualizations that are available. So I'm going to click on this one that is from Microsoft Corporation and give it a moment here, and it's just going to give me a little bit more information about it. And what I'm going to do here is say add. And what we'll notice here in a moment is now that the visual's been imported successfully, I'm going to get a message to let me know that. I'll click OK. And it's kind of hard to see on the screen here, but there's a faint gray dotted line right here. These above are the out-of-the-box visuals, and the sunburst chart is the one below. So at this point, it's like any other visual. We can go ahead and turn that cluster column chart into a sunburst chart if we want, and then go through and do whatever configurations we deem appropriate for that visualization itself. All right, so once we have that there, what if we actually decide we don't want this visual? So the way that we can go ahead and do that is first, let's go ahead and convert it back over to a cluster column chart here. And what I'll do is click on those ellipses once again, and I'm going to say remove a visual. And then it's going to ask me which one I want to remove. I'll go like that and choose remove my sunburst chart. And it's just going to let me know that we're about to remove one visual from this Power BI desktop file. So I'll just go ahead and remove that. And we'll see now that it is gone out of our visualizations palette here. All right, so that is the how to use a custom visual sublesson. And with that, we're at the end of this sublesson. In this sublesson, we are going to apply and customize a theme. So what is a report theme? With the Power BI Desktop report themes, you can apply design changes to your entire report, such as using corporate colors, changing icon sets, or applying new default visual formatting. When you apply report theme, all visuals in your report use the colors and formatting from your select theme as their defaults. Some things to know about theme files is themes can be applied only when using Power BI Desktop. You cannot apply themes to existing reports within the Power BI service. All right, so let's go to the Power BI Desktop and take a look at this. Okay, so I have a more complete version of my Power BI report now. We can see that it has some colors applied to it here. And right now, the theme that this report is using is the default Power BI theme. So how can I go about changing this? So to do so, I'm going to go to the View tab, and we can see at the very top here, there are a number of different themes. So I could go through the palette here and say, all right, well, the current theme is the default Power BI theme. Well, what if I wanted to use this one here called Bloom? I could go ahead and do that, and we'll see that the themes have been applied to certain parts of the visual. I could choose the City Park one. I can see that things change. And any number of these will give you certain features that get brought in through the theme file itself. So if I wanted to, I could go ahead and choose one of these themes that is inside a Power BI itself and what we like to call out of the box. So these are theme files that are provided directly with Power BI. But what if I wanted to go ahead and import a theme that I created on my own? What I can do here is click on Browse for Themes. I will get a dialog box that opens like this. And from here, what I'm going to do is navigate to the PL-300 folder that I have here. And I have a folder called Templates here. And if I open this up, I'm going to see that I have a theme file that I've already created. Now, this is something a web developer could do for you. It's what's called a JSON file. And what we're going to do here is after that theme file has been created, and actually physically creating the file like this is not part of the exam, but consuming a file that has already been created for you is fair game on the exam. So I'm going to go ahead and click Open. And what we're going to see here is that it says the theme file was successfully imported. And now we can see the look and feel of my report has changed now to use the theme file that I have for our corporate standards. And now that that's all in place using the theme file, if I wanted to, I could go through and perhaps go down here and say customize the current theme. And that will open up a dialog box where I can go through and change any number of items that I want about this theme. I'm not going to go through and do that in this particular example, but it is something that is available to you. And after we're all done doing any of those configurations, if I wanted to around this customized theme, I could then go ahead and save this and output it as a new file. And if you want some further information on how to go and build theme files from scratch on your own, you can just click on this right here that says how to create a theme, and that will take you out to more detailed instructions on how to actually go about doing this. But once again, this is not part of this exam. All right, so that brings us to the end of this sublesson on apply and customize a theme. Okay, so in this sublesson, we are going to configure conditional formatting. So with conditional formatting for tables in Power BI Desktop, you can specify customized cell colors, including color gradients based on field values. You can also represent cell values with data bars or KPI icons, or as active web links. You can apply conditional formatting to any text or data field, as long as you base the formatting on a field that has numeric, color name or hex codes, or web URL values. So with conditional formatting, we can format the background color or font, format by color scale, rules, color values, or a calculation, add data bars or icons, format as web URLs, or we can format totals and subtotals. So let's go to the Power BI Desktop and take a look. Okay, so I am now on the Power BI Desktop, and we can see that in my product information page here, I've got a table right here. If I just go ahead and highlight on the visual, and you can see that I've got some conditional formatting applied to the total sales. So the way that we can go ahead and influence our conditional formatting is for any of the columns inside of this table grid. I can click on one of the columns, and here's where I can go and do conditional formatting for the country column, for example. If I had conditional formatting already on there, I could remove it. And if I go down to total sales, where my conditional formatting already exists, I can click on that And here's where I can go in and configure my conditional formatting rules or get rid of all conditional formatting on that column. And right now there's only the one applied, which is icons. So I could go ahead and get rid of the icons one from here as well. So a few different things we can do. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and make sure I'm in the conditional formatting, and I'm going to go down to icons, which is where we are at already. And we can see that I've got format style of rules, so I can do rules or field values. I can apply it to the values or values and totals or totals only. So I can decide where do I want to actually apply that. What field should I base this on? I've already gone in and chose this to be total sales. I'm going to apply the icon to the right of the data. I'm going to top align it. And here is the style that I'm going to choose for that particular icon. And then these are the rules which I'm going ahead and applying for this particular conditional format. So I'm basically saying if the number is between 0 and 50,000, then I want it to be a red diamond, 50,001 and 100,000, I want it to be a yellow triangle, and 100,001 all the way to the very top, I want that to be a green circle. So these are all the different things that I can apply about that conditional formatting. And once again, if I want, I can go out here and take a look at applying additional ones. So maybe I want to put background colors on here as well. And once again, I can go ahead and choose all kinds of different ways to go and format that. So I'm not going to go through each one of these things individually, but this is enough to kind of get you started in on the conditional formatting and get you prepared for the exam in terms of things that you can do and format with conditional formatting, and showing you where to go and approach doing these tasks. Okay, so with that, we are at the end of this sublesson. All right, so in this sublesson, we are going to apply slicing and filtering. So first, let's start off with slicers. So slicers are a great choice when you want to display commonly used or important filters on the report canvas for easier access. Make it easier to see the current filtered state without having to open a drop-down list. Filter by columns that are unneeded and hidden in the data tables. Or create more focused reports by putting slicers next to important visuals. Alternately, we can use the filters pane, which is a great choice when we want to take advantage of complex filtering. Perhaps we have limited space on the page for our slicers. We want to apply filters at the report, which is all pages, page or visual levels. So we want the filters to apply at different levels of our report. Perhaps we want to lock or hide aspects of the filters pane. We want to perhaps use the filters pane to look like the rest of the report. So we could go ahead and configure it and format it to look like the rest of the report for look and feel purposes. And by default, the filters pane is formatted based on your current report settings. All right, so let's go to the Power BI desktop and take a look. All right, so we can see our sales report here, and on my report, I've got a couple slicers. So I've got a country slicer and a year slicer. And as mentioned, these slicers are really nice when we want to present them right on the report page. So I could go here and choose, maybe a particular country like so, and maybe I want to take a look at a particular year. So I can go through and apply those slicers right on the report, and they're immediately visible. Okay, so that is applying the filtering using the slicers here. So I'm just going to go back and reset this here. And the next thing I want to show you is using this filters pane. So the filters pane gives us some additional options in terms of providing filters. So given right now that the page has focus, I can see that I've got filters that are affecting this page and this page only, but not the other two that I have in my report. So down below, we can see this report has 3 pages. It has overview, order, quantity, and product information. So the filters that I applied right here would affect only this page and not these other 2. Alternately, I could put the fields, or filters I should say, at this all pages level, and then that would affect each one of the pages equally in this report. So also a couple things I can do here as well, just to show you, is I can hide the filters pane. So I can show or hide the filters pane from the report readers if I don't want them to come in and modify these. And then even on the individual visuals, I can go here and get rid of the filter that I have here. I can go ahead and lock it so that nobody can change it. or I can go ahead and hide the filter so nobody can even see that it exists in the first place. So I have a few different options I have available here. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and click on the cluster column chart right here to show you that we have some additional filters that are available on this visual as well. So I can see that I've got filters on this visual. The two fields that are on the visual already, the calendar year and total sales, are automatically available here. And once again, I can go in here and lock the filter, I can hide the filter, and I can go in and even modify with different types of filtering within this as well. So we have a lot of options inside the filters pane for really customizing the filters and doing all kinds of different things with them. So the nice thing about this as well is we can actually hide it away. So when we're not using it, we can tuck it away within this report. And this gives us a little bit more real estate on our report pages. So definitely some advantages to using the filters pane itself. So one other thing that I do want to demonstrate here as well is if I click back on the report page, is if I go over to my format my report page, is we can see that we've actually got some cards here for allowing me to go and configure the filters pane. So right now it is currently using the theme file for my report, but I could go through here and change all kinds of different things. Maybe I wanted the background color for this to be a little different. Maybe I want it to be this nice soft blue. So I could go ahead and do something like that. I'm just going to put it back to the color we had it there a moment ago, or we can go ahead and do any number of things to the actual filters pane itself, including going and taking a look at the filters cards. So lots of different formatting options that we have for this filters pane. So once again, a number of different options. We can take advantage of slicers, which have their pros and cons, which we discussed back in the slides. We have the filters pane right here, which has its pros and cons available to you. So really, which one you choose to use ultimately is up to you as the storyteller. But these kind of present all the options that are available to you inside of the Power BI desktop. All right, so with that, we are at the end of this sublesson. Okay, in this sublesson, we are going to configure the report page. So there are a number of different ways that we can configure the report page. First off, we're going to look at the page view settings. These allow you to control the display of your report page relative to the browser window. And we have a few options. We can choose between fit to page, which is our default. And here, contents are scaled to best fit the page. We can say fit to width, where contents are scaled to fit within the width of the page. And actual size, contents are displayed at full size. We can also take a look at page size settings, and these are available only for report owners. And here we can control the display ratio and actual size in pixels of the report canvas. And the options are 4:3, 16:9 ratio, which is the default, letter, and then there is a custom one which allows you to pick the height and width in pixels. On the report page as well, we can configure report themes, the page name, page background, wallpaper, filter pane, and the cards. And we'll take a look at this inside the Power BI desktop now. Right, so let's go over there. Okay, so I am on the Power BI desktop, and what I'm going to do is go over to the View tab here, and we can see here that our first set of options is the page view, and here's where I can choose between fit to page, fit to width, or the actual size, given the descriptions that we had back in the actual slide deck itself. So we have those options available to us. We can also look at the page size settings, where I will go over to the format your report page icon here. And what I can do here is go into canvas settings, and I can see here that I've got a number of different types. So I've got my 16:9, which is our default, 4:3, letter, tooltip, and we can go ahead and customize this. The tooltip one is set if we want to actually build this report page out as a custom tooltip. All right, so I'll go ahead and close that off. And we can see here, given that we still have the page in focus, is there are a number of other things we can configure. We can go to the page information and change its name. We can go to the canvas settings, which we were just in, and change how things are set up there. We can go and set some background colors and images, which we actually already have on this report. We can set wallpaper. We can then also go ahead and play with the filters pane and the cards, as we had mentioned a little bit earlier on. Okay, so those are the options that you need to know for the exam. So with that, we are at the end of the sublesson. All right, in this sublesson, we're going to use the Analyze in Excel feature. So with Analyze in Excel, you can bring Power BI datasets into Excel and then view and interact with them using pivot tables, charts, slicers, and other Excel features. The Power BI service generates an Excel workbook that contains an online analytical processing or OLAP connection to the Power BI dataset and downloads this workbook to your computer. The workbook file name matches the dataset or report or other data source from which it was derived. The first time you open the file, you might have to enable editing depending on your protected view. You might also have to enable content depending on your trusted document settings. And when using Analyze in Excel, any sensitivity labels that are applied to a Power BI dataset are automatically applied to the Excel file. If the sensitivity label on the dataset later changes to be more restrictive, when you refresh the data in Excel, the label applied to the Excel file updates automatically. If the dataset changes to become less restricted, no label inheritance or update occurs. So just some things to know about Analyze in Excel. Row-level security is supported for Analyze in Excel, and RLS is enforced at the data model level and is always applied to all users accessing the data in the report. Only Power BI datasets that use import mode will preserve hierarchies in Analyze in Excel workbooks. And analyzing Power BI data in Excel is a Power BI service feature. You can't analyze Power BI data in Excel from Power BI report server or Power BI embedded. So let's go ahead and take a look at this feature. Okay, so I am now inside of the Power BI service, and what I'm going to do here is either at the report or dataset levels, I'm going to ask it to analyze in Excel. So if I click these three little ellipses, I can say Analyze in Excel, and you would have seen there a dialog box that came underneath that said an Excel file is being generated. And if I want, I can go to my Downloads folder and take a look at what was actually downloaded here. So I can see that there's a file here called 0701 sales. If I want, I can go ahead and open that file up. So let's get that open on the machine here, and then we'll demonstrate what that actually looks like. Okay, so I can see that I have the file open, and as mentioned in the slides, I need to click on Enable Editing, which allows me to do this, and then I'm gonna have to actually enable my content as well. And at this point, once I go inside of the pivot table here, I can see that my model that was available to me over inside of the Power BI service is available in here for me to go ahead and do analysis on. So if I wanted to, I could go ahead and take my total sales, put it there, and maybe I just want to go ahead and grab my order date hierarchy and stick it in the rows, and we end up with something like that. So now you can see, maybe if I just make this a little bigger, you can see here that I've got a pivot table that is connected into my Power BI dataset, and I can go ahead and interact with it as we see fit. And in this example, if I had had OneDrive for Business in my environment here, this would have actually saved the Excel book into that environment, and then I could go ahead and interact from Excel on the web. Now in my case, it actually downloaded directly to my machine's folder, and I was able to open up the file in that manner. All right, so that brings us to the end of this sublesson on Analyze in Excel. Okay, in this sublesson, we're going to choose when to use a paginated report. All right, so what are paginated reports? Paginated reports are designed to be printed or shared. They are called paginated because they are formatted to fit well on a page. Typically, highly formatted with page headers, footers, numbers, and images that you want for a professional look and feel. And they're usually very detailed in nature. Examples of paginated reports are invoices, packing slips, bank statements, and customer lists. So if you can imagine, these examples we have here are generally a little different than what we find ourselves building inside of Power BI with our dashboards and our reports. So building paginated reports, you need the Power BI Report Builder, which is a standalone tool for authoring paginated reports for the Power BI service. And when you design a paginated report, you're really creating what is called a report definition file, or RDL file. The steps for building a paginated report are to create a data source, create a data set, then build the report. Optionally, you can add parameters to it, and then you can go ahead and publish the report. So some prerequisites for uploading a report to the Power BI service is that you need to take this paginated report and use a Power BI Pro license or Premium per user license. And we need a workspace on the service in a Power BI Premium capacity. It has a Premium diamond next to the icon if you have a workspace that meets this criteria. All right, so that brings us to the end of this lesson on choosing when to use a paginated report. This lesson focuses on the creation of dashboards, which are used to tell the stories across multiple data sets that are meant to be understood at a glance. In this lesson, we will cover how to manage tiles on a dashboard, configure mobile view, use the Q&A feature, add a quick insights result to a dashboard, apply a dashboard theme, and pin a live report page to a dashboard. Let us begin. In this sublesson, we're going to talk about managing tiles on a dashboard. So first off, what exactly is a dashboard tile? A tile is a snapshot of your data pinned to the dashboard. So let's go over to the service and just quickly take a look. So I can see here in my Power BI service, I have my dashboard set up, and right now I actually have 4 tiles on my dashboard. So I have my total sales by year tile, my top 5 by product revenue, AdventureWorks territories, and the total sales. So there's a total of 4 tiles on this dashboard. So a tile can be created from one of the following sources. It can be created from a report. It can be brought over from another dashboard. We can get them out of Power BI Q&A. We can pin them to our dashboard from Quick Insights. We can pin them out of Excel workbooks that are on OneDrive for Business. And we can also take them from SQL Server Reporting Services reports. Additional tile types are one of the following categories. There are other media, which can be web content, images, text box, or video, or we can have a category of tiles that are real-time data, and we can bring in custom streaming data. And streaming tiles are added directly to the dashboard as the streaming data set is created in the service. So these are not being pulled from the desktop datasets that are being created. So these are created directly in the service. Okay, so let's get ourselves out to the Power BI service and take a look at these. So first, let's take a look at some of the settings at the dashboard level before we get into looking at some of the settings for an individual tile. So if I go to my sales analysis dashboard, click those 3 ellipses and go down to settings, we can, for the dashboard, go ahead and turn the Q&A search box on and off. So what this would do, this would affect the ability for us to ask questions of our data, have those visuals drawn out, and then put back onto our dashboard. So I'm just going to turn that off and say apply, just to show you what this looks like, and we'll see the Q&A box is gone. So now I don't have the ability to ask a Q&A question of my dashboard so that I could generate brand new tiles. So let's go ahead and just add that back in here. So I'm just going to go back there and say show the Q&A box. Okay, so we're back over here now. So let's take a look at some of the settings on the individual tiles. Okay, so to see the settings on the individual tiles, we'll click the 3 little ellipses in the upper right-hand corner here, and we can see that we can add a comment to the dashboard tile. We can chat in Teams on this particular dashboard tile. We can copy the visual as an image. We can go directly to the report if we want to. So we could either click the dashboard tile or say go to report. We can open this up in focus mode, which will go ahead and bring the tile into a larger view here. So I can go back to the dashboard tile here. We can also say export to CSV. If I go ahead and click on that, a CSV file will be generated. So let's just go ahead and open that file up here. And I've opened up the CSV file here, and we can see the total sales and the order date calendar. So we just end up getting the data that was on the visualization itself, and not the actual underlying table that is back at source. Okay, so let's go back over here once again. I can click on the edit details. So here I can go in and asked to display the title and the subtitle, so I can turn that off, on and off if I want. And if you recall back in one of our previous demos, this one over here was actually filtered to Australia. So I'm going to go into this one and say edit details, and I'm just going to go in here and add an additional subtitle. Okay, so I've got my additional subtitle added in here, and I'm saying for Australia. So now it's a little bit more clear as to where this data is being filtered. All right, so I can also go in here and say display the last refresh time for that particular tile. So I can go ahead and do that, which is always really nice because sometimes people want to understand when this was last refreshed. So I'm going to go ahead and click apply now, and that's going to apply those changes to the tile. And once again, if we click the ellipses here, we can pin the tile. So here's where we can take a tile off of this dashboard and pin it onto another dashboard. I'm not going to go ahead and do that. And finally, if we wanted to go ahead and delete the tile, we could go and do that. One thing that we can also do is we can move the tiles around. So if I want to move this tile over here, I can just click on them and move them around like so. You notice I can also resize them. So down in the bottom right-hand corner, I can move this around here. So you'll see that there is a gray area in the background there. So if I let my tile go, it's going to snap to the edges of that gray area. So I have to move my tile around till it gets sized like that. And now I can go ahead and drop it. So it's always a little bit interesting trying to get your tiles resized, but that's basically how it works on the dashboard side. And if I wanted to take a look at adding any of the additional tile types, I can go up to the top here and edit, click on this and say add a tile. And here's where we can add in web content, an image, text box, video, or if we want, we could go and add real-time data through custom streaming right here. So let's go ahead and hit cancel there. And finally, the last thing that we want to show you here is we're just going to go back out to the workspace itself. And I just want to show you where we can go ahead and set sensitivity labels on our dashboards as a whole as well. So back out here, I can click on the 3 ellipses here under more options. And what I can do is go down to settings. And here we can go through and take a look at some additional settings at the dashboard level. So what is the owning workspace? What is the name of the dashboard? Who's the contact? Coming down here to see that the Q&A is on. We allow people to make comments on this dashboard. We have the dashboard tile flow off on this one here. And here's where we can actually go ahead and apply sensitivity labels at the dashboard level if we go ahead and decide to do that. Okay, so I'm just going to click cancel there. And that brings us to the end of this sublesson on managing tiles on a dashboard. In this sublesson, we're going to look at setting the mobile view. We can optimize dashboards for mobile use. When you view dashboards in portrait mode on a phone, you notice the dashboard tiles are laid out one after another, all the same size. You can create a customized view of dashboard specifically for portrait mode on phones. Even if you create a phone view, when you turn the phone view sideways, you see the dashboard as it is laid out in the service. Let's now go over to the Power BI service and take a look at this. So I am in my Power BI service here, and I can go over to my sales analysis dashboard. So I'm just going to go ahead and open it up. And we can see now that we have the 4 tiles that we had created in a previous sublesson. So let's go up to the top here under edit. Let's click on that and say mobile layout. Okay, so now we can see the mobile layout. So we can take the tiles and move them up and down as we see fit. If we want, we can unpin tiles from this particular dashboard. So when we pull it up in the mobile view and look at it in portrait mode, we will only see these 3 tiles here flowing in this direction. And if I want to go ahead and add this tile back from the unpinned area, I can go ahead and click add tile, and it will put it back at the very bottom here. Okay, so now we have that. I could go back and click on the reset tiles. This is going to let me know that we'll reset them and put them back in the original size and order. So we'll go ahead and do that. And finally, if you really want to, you do have the ability to resize the tiles here. So I can go ahead and move them around like this if I see fit. So let me just go ahead and do that just to demonstrate it to you. Although this is really starting to not look that good from a mobile device perspective, but it is worth showing you that you have the ability to do these different things. And lastly, I can go ahead and unpin all the tiles from the dashboard if I really wanted to start from scratch. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and reset that. And now to get ourselves back over into the web layout, I can go over the top here, click web layout, and that will take us back over here. All right, so that brings us to the end of this sublesson. In this sublesson, we're going to use the Q&A feature. We use Q&A to explore data using intuitive natural language capabilities to receive answers in the form of charts and graphs. Q&A only provides results about the data in your Power BI dataset. It can be disabled on a dashboard by dashboard basis, and unless the designer has given you edit permissions, you'll be able to use Q&A to explore data, but won't be able to save any visualizations created with Q&A. Q&A picks the best visualization based on the data being displayed, and it uses the underlying model metadata to assist in selection. So let's go out now to the Power BI service to take a look. Okay, so first off, let's recap that we can actually turn the Q&A dialog on and off. So at the top of my dashboard here, I can see I've got this ask a question about your data. If I go ahead and click on that, here's where we can go ahead and ask the questions. So first, let's just go and recap where we actually go and turn that off. So I can click these three ellipses next to the dashboard, go to settings, and in here I can say show the Q&A search box on this dashboard. If I uncheck that checkbox and click apply, then that dialog will disappear. So I'm going to just go back out to the dashboard here. All right, so let's look at going ahead and entering a question into the Q&A here. So I'm just going to click on that. And the first question I'm going to ask is, I'm going to say show total sales. And you'll notice down below, it actually shows the total sales across the entire data set without any filters. And it is actually doing it on a card visualization because that is what Power BI is determining at this point in time is the best visualization to use based on the question. If I go ahead and expand this question to say total sales by product name, I will get a very different visualization, and Power BI will go ahead and do this. I could then go ahead and add additional filters. I can go ahead and add some more fields on here, change the visualization if I want. So I can now go ahead and do some customization of this. Once complete, I can actually click Pin Visual. So let's just go ahead and do that. And it'll ask me where do we want to go ahead and pin it. And I'm going to say to the existing dashboard called Sales Analysis. So I can just go ahead and click Pin. And let's just skip by that mobile layout and go back over to our dashboard. And we'll now notice that we have a brand new tile here called Total Sales that was sourced out of the Q&A. Okay, and finally, I ultimately don't want this tile on my dashboard, so I'm just going to click the ellipses here and say Delete Tile. And now I'm back to the four that I had. All right, so that brings us to the end of this sublesson. In this sublesson, we're going to add a quick insights results to a report. So let's just do a quick overview of quick insights. It is useful as a starting point for new data sets. Quick Insights utilizes a set of advanced analytic algorithms to generate visualizations based on your dataset and/or visuals. Applying the algorithms at the dataset level is known as Quick Insights, and applying them at the tile level is known as Scoped Insights. So what we need to do first is choose where we want to run insights from. Do we want Quick Insights or Scoped Insights? Then we're going to review the visual outputs. If required, we're going to filter the visualizations by using the available options in the filtered pane. And if we find visuals that are interesting, we can go ahead and pin them into our dashboards. A couple notes about Quick Insights is it does not work with direct query, streaming, and push datasets. It only works with data uploaded to the Power BI service. And Quick Insights is only available in the Power BI service itself. This is something we cannot do back down in the desktop. All right, so let's go ahead and get in the Power BI service and demonstrate what this looks like. Okay, so I am in my DA100 exam workspace here. And what I want to do here is I'm going to go into, I'm just going to pick the sales composite model and go in here and see if I can view my insights. Now, we're going to notice that Quick Insights is grayed out here because keeping in mind that that sales model that I just showed you is a composite model, so it has direct query embedded into it, and Quick Insights won't work for that type of model. But the one down below here called Sales Incremental with these three little dots, I can go ahead and go here and say Get Quick Insights. So that's going to allow us to go ahead and run Quick Insights at the data set level here. So once again, it's going to go and apply those advanced analytic algorithms to generate data that may be of interest to us. Okay, so now I can see my insights already. I can click on View Insights, and what it's going to do is take us over to all the visuals that were generated out of Quick Insights. So I can just go through each one of these visuals here and see if there's anything interesting that I may want to put onto a dashboard. And so I can go ahead and scroll my way through each one of these visuals and see, once again, if there's anything interesting here. And maybe I just want to go ahead and take this one here where it says count to sales territory. And it's letting me know the United States has noticeably more sales territories, which is something we would have probably figured out on our own because all the other countries outside the States, there's only one sales territory in each one of those countries. So it's just letting us know that. If we did find this interesting, we could go ahead and click this pin visual to actually pin it into an existing dashboard. So I'm just going to go ahead and pin that and take my quick insights results over there. Okay, so now I am on the actual dashboard itself where I pin this visual, and I can go ahead and treat it like any other tile on a dashboard. And now I'm back over on the quick insights for my sales incremental model. And let's just go over here and suppose we wanted to actually edit this a little further. I could actually click on this count to sales territory visual, and it will take us over to this screen here where we can do a little bit more with it in terms of applying some filters to the actual visualization itself. So I'm just going to go ahead and exit the focus mode and get ourselves back over to the actual dashboard itself. Okay, so now let's show you what scoped insights looks like. So if I go ahead and click on these 3 ellipses in the upper right hand corner of a dashboard tile, I can go over here as well and say view insights. And what that's going to do is go ahead and run insights against the data set for this particular tile. So let's give it a moment here to go ahead and generate. All right, so we can see that the results have gone ahead and generated. And once again, I can go through here, much like I did at the quick insights level, these scoped insights, I can look through them and say, all right, this one here I think is interesting. I'll go ahead and pin it over into my scoped insights dashboard. And now I can go to the dashboard and I have a third tile which has been put out of here based on the quick insights. All right, so that is it when it comes to quick insights and this particular sublesson. In this sublesson, we are going to add a dashboard theme. So dashboard themes are there so we can apply a color theme to your entire dashboard, such as corporate colors, seasonal coloring, or any other color theme you may want to apply. When you apply a dashboard theme, all visuals on your dashboard use the colors from your selected theme. Changing the colors of the report visuals on a dashboard does not affect the visuals in the associated report. When you pin tiles from a report that already have a theme applied to them, you can choose to keep the current theme or use the dashboard theme. So keeping in mind that there's themes in 2 places here. There's themes at the report level and there's themes on the dashboard. Some considerations and limitations. You cannot apply dashboard themes to pinned live report pages, iframe tiles, SSRS tiles, workbook tiles, or images. You see dashboard themes on mobile devices, but you can only create a dashboard theme in the Power BI service itself. Dashboard custom themes work only with tiles pinned from reports. So let's go out to the Power BI service and take a look. Okay, so let's go right from the top here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove this total sales tile off my dashboard here. So I'm just going to remove it first to go ahead and get it pinned back on and then show you where we were being asked if we want to apply the theme. So I'm just going to go back to the sales report over to the overview page here, and I'm going to once again say pin total sales. So when I made that selection here, this is where it's asking me, do I want to use the destination theme if I have a theme applied on the dashboard, or do I want to keep the current theme that is coming off the report? What I'm going to do here is keep the current theme off the report, go pin, go like this, and now I'm going to go back over to my dashboard. So we'll notice the total sales is now back here. Let's go and look at editing the theme file here. So I'm going to go up to the edit menu, go to dashboard theme, and here's where I have a few options. I can upload a JSON theme file if I have one already created for the dashboard, or I can go and make some selections from this drop-down box. I can choose light, which is what we're on now. I can choose a darker mode. I can choose a colorblind friendly mode, or if I want, I can go in and choose some custom options as well. So I can go and change the background image. I can change the background color. So let's just go and maybe change that to teal just for fun. I can change the tile background colors. I can change the tile font colors, and I can also modify the opacity of this. So I can just go ahead and click Save, and now I have my new theme being applied to this particular dashboard. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this sublesson. In this sublesson, we're going to pin a live report page to a dashboard. And you can pin an entire report page to a dashboard, and this is a great way to pin more than one visual at a time. When you pin an entire page, the tiles are live. You can interact with them right there on the dashboard, much like you can within a report. And changes you make to any of the visualizations back in the report editor for the report are reflected in the dashboard tile. Right, so let's go out to the Power BI service and take a look at this. Okay, so I am in the Power BI service right now, and I'm looking at my overview report here. And what I want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and pin this as a dashboard. So if you click these little ellipses right next to the edit pencil and say pin to a dashboard, I can go in here and pin it to an existing dashboard, or go ahead and pin it into a new one. So let's just go ahead and give that a name. Okay, so we call this Sales Analysis Report, and I'm going to go ahead and click Pin Live, and now we're going to have a brand new dashboard here called Sales Analysis Report, which is the entire report itself. And you're going to notice here now we can actually interact with this dashboard. If I want, I can go back now over into the workspace I was working in here, the one called AdventureWorks Demo. And if I go back down to the sales report, and let's just get rid of one of these tiles here. So I'm going to click on Edit, and I'm going to go here into Yearly Target, go like this, and say Remove. Once I go ahead and save this, if I now go back to my Sales Analysis Report dashboard, we're going to notice that tile has been removed as well. All right, so that's really about it. And that brings us to the end of this sublesson. This lesson focuses on taking the reports which you created earlier and elevating to the next level by focusing on interactivity between report elements. In this lesson, we will cover how to configure bookmarks, create custom tooltips, edit and configure interactions between visuals, configure navigation for a report, apply sorting, configure sync slicers, group and layer visuals by using the selection pane, drill down into data using interactive visuals, export report data, and design reports for mobile devices. Let us begin. In this sublesson, we are going to configure bookmarks. So with bookmarks, you capture the currently configured view of a report page, including filtering and the state of visuals. Later, you can go back to that state by selecting the saved bookmark. You can also create a collection of bookmarks, arrange them in the order you want, and later step through each bookmark in a presentation-like format. So the elements that are saved with the bookmark are the current page, filters, slicers, including the slicer type, so for example, dropdown or list, and slicer state, visual state selection, such as cross-highlighted filters, sort order, drill location, the visibility of an object by using the selection pane, the focus or spotlight modes of any visible object. You can also link shapes and images to bookmarks. So with this feature, when you select an object, it shows the bookmark associated with that object. Some other notes are that you can create and use bookmark groups. A bookmark group is a collection of bookmarks that you specify which can be shown and organized as a group. When you publish a report to the Power BI service with at least one bookmark, you can view and interact with those bookmarks in the Power BI service. Once you're in the Power BI service, you also have the ability to create personal bookmarks. So if you can view a report, then you can also add personal bookmarks. And the number of personal bookmarks per report is 20. When you create a bookmark, the same elements are saved with the bookmarks as when you created them on the desktop. So let's go out into the Power BI desktop and take a look. Okay, so let's go out here on this Power BI desktop report and take a look at bookmarks. So what I've done here is I got the report open. I'm on the View tab, and I'm just going to click on Bookmarks here. we will see here that if I make this just a little bit bigger, this report page, or report actually I should say, has 3 bookmarks already created on it. So if I just go through the bookmarks and click on each one, I can see there's a performance dashboard home, one that has US sales for 2012 by month, and one that is US sales 2013 by month. So each one of these is a saved bookmark with various states being saved along with it, as I mentioned back in the slides. Okay, so what if I wanted to go ahead and modify some of these bookmarks? So let's just suppose that I wanted to go over here and I wanted to have the filters pane open up on this particular bookmark page. What I can do is do that, click these 3 ellipses and say update. Now, if I was to come back to this page again, or bookmark, the filters pane would be open by default, like so. I can also go here, let's just suppose that I want to maybe spotlight mode the yearly target like this. I can once again go over here, click update. And then if I come back over to this page here, that is saved along with the bookmark itself. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn off spotlight mode. And the other thing that I want to do here is close the filters pane, and I'll just go back over here and click update. So I can go ahead and modify each one of these pages. I can click here to say add a new page as well. So if I want, I can click on add, which is just taking a copy of what I was clicked on before. And maybe for this one here, I want to go in and change this one to 2011. And once I've got that changed, oops, I should go like this, try it again. So click here and go to 2011 and go update. You can see now that if I come back over here, this one is saved to 2011. So now if I want, I can also go here and rename, and I could call this United States Sales 2011 by month. Okay, so we've got our bookmarks like this, and if I want, the last thing to show you is I can go ahead and group the bookmarks. So if I got a set of bookmarks that I want to put together in the group, I can do so like that. I can then go ahead and rename that group. In this case here, I'm just going to say ungroup to go ahead and get rid of it. Okay, so one other thing that I want to show you as well, so I'm just going to turn the selection pane off here, is that we can go ahead and add some objects to our report and have them connected into one of the bookmarks. So what I'm going to do here is go to insert. What I'm going to do is go over here and let's just go ahead and put a button on here. So I'm just going to go and say, let's just call it a blank button like this. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and leave that on the screen. And what I can do here is when I highlight that and go over to the format button, what I can do is I can set up an action for that button. So I'm going to turn the action on. And what I'm going to do here is make this of type bookmark and then tell this what do I actually want to go back to. So I'm going to say the performance dashboard home, which is the dashboard in the unfiltered state. And that is good. So now what is really nice about this button here is if I went and started doing some work with my dashboard like so and started interacting with it, I could click on this button here and it would take me back to the default state of the report. So I can effectively use a button like this to go ahead and clear the report back to the unfiltered state, which is just associating itself in with the bookmark. So after I've gone and finished this up, I could publish this into the Power BI service, and then I can go ahead and build personal bookmarks. Let's just go to the service really quickly and show you that. So I am now over in the Power BI service looking at my report. And if I want, I can click on this button up at the top right hand side that says bookmarks. And here I can go in and say show more bookmarks. And this will then go and show me the report bookmarks that were saved along with the data model that we did back in the Power BI desktop. And then in addition, here's where I can go and create personal bookmarks. So I may want to go in and put this report into a different state. So maybe I only want this to include 2011 and 13. And what I can do here is go and add a bookmark in here. I'm not going to go ahead and name it, just go save. And I can also go in here and make it the default bookmark like so. And this way now I have additional bookmarks in addition to the one that I've created at the data model level, and go ahead and build these for myself personally. All right, so with that, we're at the end of the sublesson. Okay, in this sublesson, we are going to create custom tooltips. So what are custom tooltips? You can create visually rich report tooltips that appear when you hover over visuals based on report pages you create in the Power BI desktop. By creating a report page that serves as your tooltip, your custom tooltips can include visuals, images, and other collections of items you create in the report page. You can include both categorical and numeric fields in the tooltip fields bucket, including measures. And when a report tooltip is displayed for a line chart, only one tooltip for all lines in the chart is displayed. When a visual is being cross-highlighted in a report, report tooltips always show the cross-highlighted data, even if you're hovering over the faded section of the data point. So let's go and take a look at this in the Power BI desktop. So I am in the Power BI desktop, and before we go and take a look at custom tooltips, let's just hover over top of the bars here at the very bottom here in this visual, the top 5 are product revenues, to see what the default out-of-the-box tooltips look like. So we can see here that I've got the tooltip that just enhances that visualization with a little bit of extra information and perhaps even just a little bit more detail than what you would see on the visualization itself. Now we're going to compare that to the tooltips we have over in the cluster column chart, where you can see that by hovering over top of any one of these years here, I get a more enhanced visualization under the covers here to go ahead and present. And this is nice too, because it prevents me from navigating perhaps to another page or going elsewhere to find a little bit more detailed information. So how did we get this created? So I'm going to go over to this order quantity page on my report, and we can see that I've got the visual all configured, and there's just a couple things we need to know about it. So if I was to go over to my report page and take a look at the canvas settings here, I would see that this canvas is set up as a tooltip. So if you recall, in a previous sub-lesson, we discussed how we can go ahead and set up and configure this, and tooltip is what we chose this time. The other thing we have here is in the page view, which was in a previous sub-lesson, is this time we're choosing actual size for the page. So when somebody goes to use this, this will be the actual size of that visualization. So the visual here is all set up and complete. Now what we want to do is enable the visual over on the overview page to go ahead and take advantage of that. So that's what we're going to do next here. So what we do here is highlight on the total sales by year. And if once again I go over to my format your visual and then click on general here, I'll see that I've got tooltips down below here and it's turned on. So I've enabled the tooltips. The type of tooltip that I'm going to use is what's called a report page. And the page is going to be order quantity. So it's using this order quantity page here that just as a note, we have hidden page because we don't want people to access this page by itself. We want it only accessible as a tooltip. So there we go. We've got our tooltip all set up. And now, like I mentioned before, when we hover over top of this, we get a little additional information. And so with that, we are at the end of the sub-lesson. All right, in this sub-lesson, we are going to edit and configure interactions between visuals. By default, visualizations on a report page can be used to cross-filter and cross-highlight the other visuals on the page. So let's go to Power BI Desktop and show you what this looks like. So here is the report we've been working with for a while here, and what this means here in terms of cross-filter and cross-highlight is, for example, if I go to my drop-down box here and choose Australia, you're going to notice that all the visuals react to the fact that I chose Australia. So I'm going to go back up here and say select all. And similarly, if I go up here and say, all right, I'm going to choose the year 2012, we'll notice that all the visuals react to that. I'm going to go ahead and choose all. And same thing over here is down on this total sales by year. If I click on 2012, for example, we'll notice that these visuals also react to that click. So how do we go ahead and control these behaviors? So what we're going to do here first is I'm going to click on the slicer here, and up in the Format tab, I've got Edit Interactions already turned on. And what I can do here is go ahead and change how the other visuals react to changes in that slicer. So I'm actually going to go over here to the year one instead. So let's click on year. And what I'm going to say is that if I choose anything in the year, I want to prevent this visual right here, the custom column chart, from accepting that filter. So I'm going to choose none here. And I'm going to do the same thing over here in the sales performance chart. So let's demonstrate what this looks like. So I'm just going to click on the open canvas. And here now we're going to go ahead and choose a specific year, and notice that these two visuals did not respond to that change. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click back over here, and we'll see that the edit interactions turns back on. So if I then want the filtering to go ahead and apply, I can click the little grid with a filter button right next to it like this. And what that'll mean is if I go here and choose a year, we'll notice now that it is reduced back down to that year. And if I want to turn it off, I can click that button there, and now we have it back off. Okay, so that is if I'm doing it from the perspective of the drop-down box. But let's just go down here and choose this visual here. So the top 5 products by revenue. So what I'm going to do here is say if I'm interacting with this visual, given this is the one that is highlighted, and go up to the total sales by year, I'm going to see that I have an additional option. I can choose to have it block the filtering. I can choose to have it accept the filter, or I could have it go ahead and just highlight what portion of that product for that year happens to represent it. So what does this look like? So with this visual highlighted, if I go down here and say highlight down below, if I go ahead and click on any one of these years, we're going to notice now that the darker color of the funnel chart here is the portion for 2013, and the lighter colors are 2011 and 2012. So this highlighting is allowing us to take a look at the portion of the data for this particular product that is of that year. So a couple different ways that we can go ahead and manage this. And the other thing I may want to do here too is I notice this line chart getting narrowed down to a single year. I may also want to say when I'm interacting with this visual to prevent the filter from showing up over here. So all kinds of different ways that we can go about doing this here. All right, so with that, we're at the end of the sublesson. In this sublesson, we're going to configure navigation for a report. So there are several report navigation techniques we can use in Power BI. We can use buttons in Power BI to let you create reports that behave similar to apps, and thereby create an engaging environment so users can hover, click, and further interact with Power BI content. You can add buttons to reports in Power BI Desktop and in the Power BI service. Some of the actions we can put on our buttons are back, bookmark, drill through, page navigation, Q&A, and web URL. So let's go to the Power BI Desktop and take a look. So I am on my Power BI Desktop here, and I've got a button right here that is called Reset Overview. And what the Reset Overview button will do is reset the page back to its default state with no filtering being put in place. And what this Reset Overview will do is take advantage of a bookmark, which is basically this overview in an unfiltered state. So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and let's just go and click around a few things here to go and change the report like so. So we can see my report has been changed. Now if I want, I can go ahead and hit the Control key and the Reset Overview, and it will reset my page back to its default state. So how did it go about doing that? So I'm just going to click on the Reset Overview button, and what we can do here is go to the Action card here within the button side of Format button, and it is turned on, and it is set to Type Bookmark. So if I open this up, here's where we'll see the other types of actions, the back, bookmark, drill through, page navigation, QA, and web URL that we spoke about back in the PowerPoint. And in this case here, we've chosen bookmark, and the bookmark we've chosen is the Performance Dashboard Home, which is effectively this page in the unfiltered state. So we can see here on this button that we can go through and do some configurations on it. So we can go through and take a look at the shape. It is a rectangle with rounded corners, so that's why it is this rectangle, and the corners are rounded off. Just click back in here. I can go through and change the style of it, so I can go through and put some text in it. So you'll notice here I have the text on, so it says Reset Overview. I could go through and do a few other configurations to the button, but that is beyond the scope of what we need to talk about here. So let's go ahead and actually show you some additional buttons. So let's go and click on this and see that if we go to the buttons, we've got a left button, or sorry, left arrow, I should say, right arrow, reset, back, information, help, Q&A, bookmark, and blank. So we've got a bunch of different buttons that we can go ahead and use. In addition, that we've got our navigation where we can go to Page Navigator and a Bookmark Navigator as well. So we've got a few different things that we can choose. I'm just going to choose a blank button and just bring that over here. Once we have that configured, we can turn the action on for that button and then go in here and determine what type of action we actually want to take. Maybe I want to make this be a page navigation. And what we can do is say, well, what destination page do we want? Let's just go and choose product information here. So now with that button being set, I could hit the control key and click on this, and now I will go over to the product information page. Similarly, you'll notice that when we get this report page set up, which we haven't done yet, is there is a button right here called the back button. So if I once again go and click on that, this back button has a navigation set up which will take me back to the page where the original click-through came from. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete this button because we don't need it. But that is just a quick demonstration on some of the buttons you can use for report navigation and how you can go ahead and configure them. And with that, we are at the end of this sublesson. In this sublesson, we are going to apply sorting. In Power BI, we can apply sorting on visuals and at the data model level itself. So let's go to the Power BI desktop to show you what this looks like. Okay, so I am in the Power BI desktop, and if I want, I could actually sort at the visual level. And to do so, I'm going to first go to this cluster column chart, which has the bars ordered in year in ascending order, so 2011, 12, and 13. So to control the sort order, I can click on these three ellipses at the top of the visual and go down to sort axes and say, perhaps I want to sort this descending by the calendar year, so it goes 13, 12, 11 instead, or perhaps I want to say sort descending by total sales. So I may want to do something like that. So I can control sorting on the visualization level using this technique that I just showed you here. Another place that we can apply sorting is at the data model level. So on this line chart here, I can see that if I drill down on 2012, I'm going to see that my months are actually sorting in alphabetical order. And that's not the way I want them to sort. I want them to sort in month number order. So to control this, we're going to go do a sort at the data model level. So keep in mind, the visual is sorting in alphabetical order here. What we're going to do is go to the data model, change that sort, and then come back and see that the visualization has corrected itself. So to do that, we're going to go to the data view. I'm going to go into my order date table because that contains the information that I want to sort. And what I'm going to do here is find my column called order date month year. That's what's showing up on the axes. And what I'm going to do here is click on column tools and sort by column. So what I'm going to do here is tell this column here to sort based on the values in another column. So what I'm going to do here is go and find the column called year month in this case. And what that means now is I've got this column called order date month year. And what I want to do here is sort it based on the values in this column here. So now if I go back to my visual, we're going to notice that this visual has resorted itself and it's going in the correct order, January 2012 all the way to December 2012, because it's not using the text-based sort of the field itself, but it's using the values in another field. All right, so a quick little walkthrough on a couple different places in Power BI where we can apply sorting. And with that, we're at the end of the sublesson. In this sublesson, we are going to configure sync slicers. So we can synchronize individual slicers across multiple pages. And we can synchronize slicers and also make them invisible. So some notes on sync slicers. If you sync a slicer to a page but don't make it visible on that page, slicer selections made on the other page still filter the data on the page in which the slicer is hidden. Although the slicer initially appears on the synced pages as the same size and position as the original page, you can move, resize, and format synced slicers on the various pages independently. The only thing that is really synchronized is the filter value themselves. So let's go ahead and take a look at this on the Power BI desktop. All right, so I am on the Power BI desktop here, and we can see that I've got two slicers here, one called country, which lists all my countries, and year, which includes all my years. I can also see that if I go to my product information page, I also have a country slicer and a year slicer. And just to show you here, let's go ahead and change this slicer here to Australia. and see that this table narrows itself down to Australia or filters itself down to Australia. But if I go to my overview page, we'll notice that the country is set to all. So these two slicers, even though they're the same from the country table, they are not actually synchronized. But what if I wanted them to be synchronized? So let's go ahead and take a look at how to do this. So I've just clicked on the View tab here, and now we can see there is an option over here on the far right-hand side to go ahead and sync our slicers. So I can go ahead and turn that on, and I'm going to click on my country here so I can see my slicers, and we can see that we've got a couple slicers here that are not synchronized between our various pages. So what we can do while we're on the country slicer is go to sync slicers here, and we can click on this product information right here, like so. And what that's going to make happen here is so that these are synchronized between the two pages. So now if I was to go over to the product information page, we'll see that the country is set to all. Once again, now let's just go ahead and change this to Canada, and I should be able to go back to the overview page, and Canada will be here as well, because now the slicers have been synced between the two. Some additional things that we can do here, so if I once again click on the Canada slicer, is I could go ahead and let's just say I want to make this invisible on the product information page for say. So let's just go ahead and click that. And if I go to my product information page, we're going to notice that this country drop-down box is now gone. So what I'm going to do here is go back over to the overview page, and let's just change it to Australia here. We'll notice this page is filtered to Australia. We'll come back over the product information page, and is once again Australia as well. So even though this is hidden, the synchronization is still taking place. All right, so that is really it when it comes to syncing slicers. So with that, we're at the end of the sublesson. In this sublesson, we're going to group and layer visuals by using the selection pane. So related to the bookmarks pane, the selection pane provides a list of all the objects on the current page and allows you to select an object to specify its visibility. It's important to note that slicers continue to filter a report page regardless of whether they're visible. You can also configure the tab order to customize the order of objects on the page, which helps with accessibility. So let's go to the Power BI desktop to demonstrate. So I am on the Power BI desktop, and what I want to do is go ahead and turn the selection pane on. So to do that, I'm going to go to the View tab and click on Selection, and we're going to see here that we have the selection pane up now. So what we can do with the selection pane is go ahead and take a look at all the different objects on the page. So let's just click on this text box here, and we can see that the text box is the one for the year. So that's not really descriptive. So what I'm going to do here is actually give this a better name. So I've double clicked on that one and gave it a new name called text box here. And so now let's go over to this text box, and this is the one for country. Let's just double click on that, and I'm going to call this country so that we can better differentiate these. So we can see now that these text boxes, which ones they actually are. It's just going to make things a little bit easier here. We can also see the same thing with the slicer. So I'm going to click on slicer, and once again, let's just go ahead and rename this one to slicer-year so we know which slicer that one is. And this one right here, what we can do is go over and just call this one slicer country. Okay, so we've gone through and given these a little bit better names so that we can actually do something with them. Now I would go ahead and let's maybe just call this one button as well, so just we know exactly what it is here. Just really good to go through and make sure we give these appropriate names. Now we have a little bit better view as to what each one of these are here. So what we also can do in the selection pane is we can hide visualization. So if I want this button to be hidden for some reason, I can click on that, and we'll notice the button is still there as an object. It's just hidden from the report page. So I can go ahead and hide visualizations using the selection pane as well. And sometimes we use that in combination with the bookmarks pane. And just to highlight here, what the layering really means is the layering order reflects the ordering on the canvas. The first listed visual is on the topmost layer, and the last listed visual is on the bottommost layer within the report itself. So we can see here that the button is on the top layer and total sales by year is on the bottom layer. So we can shuffle these around if we want. So what I'm going to do is let's just go ahead for fun here and let's put our country button, or the country text I should say here. So I'm going to grab my text country and let's move that to the very top here. And then I'm going to move my slicer for country up here as well. So let's go ahead and put that right below. Then perhaps just do a couple more of these things. Let's grab the year text box, which is right here, and then maybe the slicer for the year as well. So let's just go ahead and move these around. So now I've affected the layer order of these particular visualizations. So that is the layer ordering in terms of how they appear on the report page. I can go over here into the tab order to affect how tabbing works when we actually go through these different visuals. So we can see the tab order here right now is the button, then yearly target. So if I go ahead and click on this visual here and then use my tab key, we're going to notice that the tabbing is going all over the place. So this is going to make it very difficult for a screen reader to go ahead and read out the names of these objects for accessibility purposes. So what I might want to do is actually do something similar to what I did on the layering and rearrange these so my screen reader will read this properly. So what I want to do is I'm going to leave my reset button at the top. I am going to go to my text box, which is country, move that in the second position, and then grab my slicer for the country, which is down here, put that there, and then I'll grab my text box for the year, move that, and grab my slicer for the year. And then it looks like we probably want to go total sales next. And this is why it's nice to have good names on these as well, so that it makes it easier for us to go ahead and pick these apart as we move. And then I guess total sales by year would logically be next. And then perhaps sales performance, and then the top 5 products by revenue. So now we can see if I highlight that object here and now use my tab keys, things are going to move across the screen in a little bit more of a logical and sequential order. So that is quite nice as well. So we can also go ahead and take individual layers or the tabs here, and actually we can turn them off once again. So if we want to, we can go ahead and hide things from the view. So we can go ahead and do that. Just move that one back to the top here. And we can do something similar over here in the layer order if I hop back over to it, and we can build groups. So let's just suppose that I want to click on this right here, and let's make sure we got it highlighted here. Oh, let's try the slicer here. So let's go down here and, well, actually, sorry, we have to click on a few of these things. So let's go like this and click the 4 of them. My apologies. Now what we can do is here, go to group, and we can maybe say this is, let's just go ahead and rename this group here, right here. So if I go like this and double click on it, I can maybe call this the slicer group or something like that, because these are all the objects that have to do with the slicers. And I can just go ahead and group this. And now I can actually use this to turn off the entire group altogether if I want. So this is handy if you have a lot of objects on the page and you want to group them together. And you're going to find this being quite handy when you start doing a lot of work with bookmarks. All right, so with that, we're at the end of this sub-lesson on using the selection pane. In this sub-lesson, we're going to drill down into data using interactive visuals. Drilldown is used to navigate from aggregated data that is presented at a high level to lower levels of detail. The use of Drilldown requires a hierarchy, and by default, drilling won't filter other visuals in a report. However, the report designer can change this default behavior. Let's go to the Power BI desktop and take a look. Okay, so I am in the Power BI desktop here now, and I'm going to take a look at my sales performance line chart here. And if I highlight the line chart, we're going to see that there's a bunch of buttons across the top of this. And the reason that these buttons exist, which allow us to perform the drill down, are because if I open up my order date table, we are actually using the order date hierarchy, which we showed you how to build earlier on in the course, to actually drive the x-axis. And then that's what allows us to drill down from years into months and then into individual days. So this hierarchy is controlling that drill path. So I'm just going to close that back up. And maybe we'll close the fields pane as well here just to give us a little more real estate. Okay, so what I've got here is I've got the drill mode is turned on. So at this point in time, if I click on a data point like this 2012 here, we're going to see that the visualization starts going down to lower levels of detail. And if I click on this, I can get down into individual months and all the days within this individual month here. So if I want to drill back up in the hierarchy, I can click this arrow next to it, and that takes us all the way back up to the top. What I can also do here is I can take this hierarchy and drill it to the next level. So I can go from here all the way down to the next level, and that's going to show us all the data points here at the month and year level. And if I click this again, this is going to take me all down one more level, and you're going to notice this keeps it all on the single visual here. And I can see a lot of little dots in behind that are the individual days that make up all the dates between the start and end date of this particular visualization. So once again, I'm going to drill all the way back up here. Here, I'm going to click on this one. It drills slightly different. I'm going to expand all down one level in the hierarchy. And here we can see we've got the years and then the label for the next level down here. And if I click this one more time, I can see that it's going to take me down into the individual days. And this time, instead of keeping it all in the single visual, it is spreading it out over the entire visualization here. So each of these is behaving slightly different. So I can go ahead and take myself back up to the top. And if I want, I can actually turn this drilling off so that I can't actually click on these buttons and drill any further. I click on it, I notice the other visuals are highlighted with my edit interactions, which we talked about earlier. But in this case here, it doesn't actually filter them down, and we don't actually see this visual going any lower in the actual hierarchy itself. All right, so with that, we are complete this sublesson on drill down into data using interactive visuals. In this sublesson, we are going to export report data. So in Power BI Desktop or the Power BI service, you can export reports to a PDF file and thereby easily share or print your reports from that PDF. We can export data from visualizations. So if you'd like to see the data that Power BI uses to create a visualization, you can display that in Power BI. You can export to Excel as an XLSX or CSV file. Exporting the data requires a Pro or Premium license as well as edit permissions to the dataset and report. If you have access to the dashboard or report, but the data is classified as highly confidential, Power BI will not allow you to export the data. So let's go out and demonstrate. Okay, so we are on the Power BI desktop here, and what we're going to do is look to export this report as a PDF. What we'll notice here is we've got several tabs which are visible down below here, and we have two that are actually not visible. We actually have them set to be hidden. So when we go to export this PDF, they will not show up. So what we're going to do is go to the File menu, go to Export. We're going to choose Export to PDF. We're going to give it a moment here, and it will go ahead and build us this PDF out. Okay, so once that process is complete, we can see we have a PDF document built out of the report, only showing us the pages that were actually visible. So keeping in mind there were two report pages there that were not visible, and they do not show up in this PDF. Next up, what we're going to do is we're going to go to an individual tile here. So we're going to go to the sales performance right here, and we're going to click the ellipses in the upper right hand corner, and we're going to choose export data here. So now we will get the option to go ahead and export the data from that particular file as a CSV. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose save. We'll give it a minute here, and then we can go take a look at what that CSV file data looks like. So now this is what that CSV file looks like. This is the output of that visualization that we saw on the previous screen. All right, so now next, let's go out to the Power BI service to take a look there. Okay, so I am now in the Power BI service. So what I'm going to do here is, to show you where to do this, is go to the Export drop-down button, and here I can click on PDF. So I have a couple different options here. I can export with the current values or the default values. I can choose to exclude hidden report tabs, which I want to do in this case here. I don't want the other two tabs that we made hidden back in the desktop to show up here. Or do I want to set to export only the current page? So in this case here, I'm just going to choose these values, click Export. And similar to what happened before, a PDF file is going to generate from the Power BI service. So let's wait for that process to finish and conclude. And when the export process finished to PDF, we can see that we get a similar PDF file to what we had back on the desktop. Right, so we can also export data off of tiles on the reports in the Power BI service. So what I'm going to do here is click on these ellipses, and we'll see this export data button here, but it is grayed out. It says export data isn't available for this visual. And you may ask yourself why, and that is because back down in the Power BI service, we have actually disabled the ability to export data. So let's show you where you do that in the Power BI service. So actually, I should say back over in the Power BI desktop. So I'm back over in the Power BI desktop is where we're going to set the ability to not allow people to export data out of the report. So let's go over to the File menu. We're going to go to Options and Settings this case. I'm going to go to Options, and near the bottom of the Settings pane here, what I'm going to do is go to the current file, choose Report Settings, and we can see here that under Export Data, I've got it set so I do not want to allow end users to export any data from the service or report server. So what if I want to change these configurations? I have a couple different options. I can say allow end users to export data with current layout and summarized data from the Power BI service or Power BI report server, or allow end users to export data with current layout, summarized data, and underlying data from the service or report server. So there's a couple different ways that we can go ahead and configure this. So what I'm going to do is allow people to go ahead and export this out. So let's go ahead and just choose that box and click OK. When I do that, I'm going to have to go ahead and republish my work. So I'm going to republish this up to the Power BI service, have it in my workspace. We'll go like that. We'll give it a moment to go ahead and do the refresh and republish back over to the Power BI service. So that will just take a brief moment here. We see it has succeeded, so I'm just going to click on this here, and this will take us back over to the Power BI service where we can take a look at a report. And now if I click on these ellipses, I can go ahead and export the data. So I have the ability here to export summarized data because that is what I chose in the Power BI desktop. And I can go ahead and choose the file format here as well. And you're going to see there's some restrictions. With Excel, we can have a 150,000 row max, and there is a 30,000 row max if we were exporting our stuff over to a CSV. So I can choose summarize data, click export, and now it's going to let me know that the data has been exported. I can go ahead over into my file explorer and see that I have got that data dumped out. I can open up this Excel file, and what we're going to see here momentarily once this Excel file opens up is that I have the summarized data for that visualization right here. So I can just go ahead and make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. But this is effectively what we had exported out of that visualization. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this off. And that really actually brings us to the end of this sub-lesson on how to export report data within Power BI. In this sub-lesson, we're going to design reports for mobile devices. Mobile users can use any Power BI report page in landscape orientation. Report authors can create an additional view that is optimized for mobile devices and displays in portrait orientation. This design option, which is available in both Power BI Desktop and the Power BI service, enables authors to select and rearrange just those visuals. Power BI provides several features to help you create mobile optimized versions of your report. A mobile layout view where you can create your mobile optimized report by dragging and dropping visuals onto the phone emulator canvas, and visuals and slicers that can be optimized for use on small mobile screens. In the Power BI mobile app, mobile optimized reports are indicated by a special icon as indicated below. All right, so now let's go over to the Power BI desktop and check this out. All right, so I am now on the Power BI desktop. And what I want to do here with this particular report page is go to View, and from here I can click Mobile Layout. So what I can do here is I'm just going to say got it, and now I can start dragging the different visuals onto my reporting canvas as I see fit, and then sizing them on the grid as we see myself doing in this mobile emulator. So I can go through and get this all set up. There's a number of different configurations that I can go ahead and do on here as well. So let's just say for this visual, I want to turn this on. This lets me know that the changes in the mobile layout won't affect the desktop layout, and just gives you a reminder about the changes that you're going to make here. So I can go ahead and configure additional properties of the visualizations as we move through each one of these individual cards here on the visualization. So I can go through on a visual by visual basis and go through and give some final touches to create myself a mobile optimized view. So that is it on the Power BI desktop. Now let's go over to the Power BI service. So I am now in my report in the Power BI service. And if I want, I can go over here and get myself an edit. And then from here, is where I can go through and set myself up a mobile optimized view by clicking mobile layout. And we'll see I'm going to get the exact same type of screen that I had back over on the Power BI desktop. Once again, I can go ahead and drop visuals onto the emulator canvas here, position them how I see fit. And then I once again get the same type of options over here in the visualizations pane to go and further configure these visualizations. All right, so with that, we are at the end of the sublesson. This lesson focused on performing advanced analysis in Power BI. In this lesson, we will cover how to use the Analyze feature in Power BI, identify outliers, choose between continuous and categorical axes, use groupings, binnings, and clustering, use AI visuals, use the forecast feature, and create reference line by using the Analyst pane. Let us begin. In this sublesson, we're going to use the Analyze feature in Power BI. The Analyze feature can provide additional analysis that is generated by Power BI for a selected data point. You can use this feature to determine if Power BI has found something that you haven't seen before, or if you want different insights into your data. This feature is particularly useful for analyzing why your data distribution looks the way it does. So let's go to the Power BI desktop and take a look. So I am in the Power BI desktop, and I'm going to go to my line chart here, and with my drill mode on, I'm going to click on a data point here in 2012 to take myself down to all the different months in 2012. Now what I can do is hover over top of one of these data points, right click and say Analyze. And here I can say explain the increase. So I can go ahead and do this. Power BI will take a moment and come back with a number of insights which explain the increase in sales between the different months here. So I can go and scroll through these insights and go ahead and give it some information as to whether the insight was positive or negative based on what we're found here. And if I really like the insights, I can click this plus symbol to go ahead and add the visual to the page. Now, I went and clicked the plus symbol there, and we can see that it is now been added in behind the scenes there. I'll go ahead and get rid of that in a moment. But I can scroll through here and see what these insights are telling me in terms of what has happened with my sales. So I can see that the visuals dropped here. I don't want that anymore, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter, or delete, I should say. And that is really it. So you can use the Analyze function here to go and explain what is happening with your data and see what the patterns happen to be. All right, so with that, we're at the end of this sublesson. In this sublesson, we are going to identify outliers. An outlier is a type of potential anomaly in your data. It's important to identify outliers to isolate data points that significantly differ from others, and then investigate the reason for the differences. This can make a significant impact on business decision-making. Scatter charts show the relationship between two numerical values. They're used to show patterns in large sets of data, for example, showing linear or non-linear trends, clusters, and outliers. And a bubble chart can replace data points with bubbles, with the bubble size representing an additional third data dimension. With scatter charts, you can set the number of data points up to a maximum of 10,000. We will want to consider high-density sampling in Power BI scatter charts for large data sets. So let's go take a look. So I have here a demonstration of a scatter chart. And once again, the scatter chart displays the relationship between two numerical values, and the scatter chart combines the intersection of X and Y into single data points. So some of the use cases around the scatter chart, they can be used to display the relationship between profits and discounts for each product sold at a company. And this visual can illustrate the effect of implementing a discount on a product and further analyzing whether the discount affects total profit. So that is what a scatter chart can look like. Let's now go out to the Power BI desktop and enhance this into a bubble chart. So I am on my Power BI desktop, and in my sales model, I've gone ahead and added a scatter plot here. So I've got the values, which is my sales amount, the x-axis is the sales amount, my y-axis is the order quantity, as we can see here, and the legend for this is my product subcategories across the top. So what we're going to do here is add the dimension of sales amount over to the size. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now we're going to see that our bubbles change here, which is in fact the third dimension that we spoke of a moment ago here. So we can see here the different size bubbles are representing the sales amount relative to the other bubbles on the visualization itself. All right, so that brings us to the end of this sub-lesson on identifying outliers. In this sub-lesson, we are going to choose between continuous and categorical axes. So the default x-axis is what is called a continuous axis, which is applicable to numeric data. You have no control over the scale of a continuous x-axis. A categorical x-axis can use text or number values, but unlike the continuous axis, it always labels every data point. So let's go take a look. So back over on our report page here for sales, we can see that our cluster column chart has changed a little bit from what you've seen in the previous sub-lessons, and that is because I reverted it back to the original default values of continuous, because the year value down here on the x-axis, if I go over to the order date table, I can see that the years, if I just go down over here, are actually set to be numeric. So by default, these are numeric, and continuous was the default for this axis. But that's not the way that I want this data to display, because to me, this is categorical information where I want to display information based on categories and show the labels for all the different data points. So I can go into x-axis and change it, in this case, to categorical, because these are different categories of the data that are of interest to myself. All right, so with that, we're at the end of this sub-lesson. In this sub-lesson, we're going to use groupings, binnings, and clustering. So first, let's take a look at grouping. When Power BI Desktop creates visuals, it aggregates your data into chunks or groups based on values found in the underlying data. You can refine how those chunks are presented with grouping. The group type is list for grouping. Now let's take a look at binning. You can also define the bin size to put values into equally sized groups that better enable you to visualize data in ways that are more meaningful. And this is often called binning. The group type is bin for binning. So let's take a look at using binning. When we use binning, we can set the bins for numerical and time fields. You can set the bin type to size of bins or number of bins. And you can make bins for calculated columns, but not for measures. And finally, let's talk about clustering. Clustering is a method of identifying similar groups of data in a data set. Data points in each group are comparatively more like data points of that group than those of other groups. And for this, we can use the scatter chart in Power BI to perform clustering. So let's go out to the Power BI desktop and take a look at groupings and binnings. Okay, so I am on the Power BI desktop here, and we can see that I have a very simple visual here. I have my total sales on the y-axis and the different regions that are part of our data set over here and our sales territories along the x-axis. And if I want, I could actually pick different data points here. So I can maybe say United Kingdom and Germany. So let's just pick these two. And what if I wanted these two presented together? I could right click on this after I've chose those, and I can go here and say group data. And what that's going to do is go ahead and group that data into a group called Germany, United Kingdom, and all the other data points are referred to as other. So that's what I can do by default. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. Actually, let's go like this instead. So what I'm going to do is turn this off, and I'm going to put this region that I have here on the x-axis. Let's just go ahead and do that and get rid of this. And now we're going to go ahead and take a look at some different ways that I've grouped data based on this group that I've already set up. So what I'm going to do is click on this region group, right click and say edit group. And here we can go in and take a look at this in further detail. So the name of this is region, and the field which we have this set up on is region. The group type is list, and we cannot go ahead and change that. So if you recall that back from the slides, and we can see here that I've got a number of values on the left-hand side that are ungrouped, so they do not belong to a group. And what I had done here is I went through and set up a number of groups. So I got the Commonwealth, which is Australia, Canada, United Kingdom, EU, which is France and Germany, and I've gone through and set up a number of other groups. So I could, if I want, go ahead and ungroup certain data points from this Commonwealth. So if I want to get rid of the United Kingdom from there, I can do that. Or if I want, I can go back over here. If I want to put them back, as I can click on the Commonwealth here and say group, and that will go ahead and put the United Kingdom back over here. So that's how I can initially go ahead and set my groups up and then move things back and forth. One other thing that I want to point out here is I can actually turn this little checkbox on down at the bottom of the screen here called Include Other Group, and I can go ahead and create my own groups if I want, or I can automatically set up another group which will contain all other ungrouped values, just in case any come in that I had not accounted for. So let's go ahead and click OK, and now we can see what that data looks like with this grouping here. Now I can do something similar with hierarchies, which we talked about in an earlier sublesson, but this is how we could do it using the grouping functionality. Okay, so I am on this visual here in my Power BI desktop, and this is where I'm going to go ahead and perform binning. So in this case, on my x-axis, I have the day number of year, so the number of days across the year, and the total sales by the day number of year. And we can see this is an awful lot of data points. So what if we want to group this into different sections? So for this, we're going to go ahead and set up some bins using the binning functionality. So how we're going to do this is I'm going to go over to my order date here. I am going to go down here and find my day number of year right here. And this is where I initially have that data point, but I've also actually already gone ahead and created the bins for day number of year. So I'm going to just right click on this and go and edit the group to show you what we've done here. So this is the name of the groups here. We can see the field is based on day number of year. The group type is bin for this. The bin type is size of bins. So I can go here and choose the size of the bins that I want, or I can choose the number of bins. So with size of bins, I can go down here and say, how many values do I want in each bin? Or I can go down here and say number of bins, and then it will automatically give me some value here. And this is the way that I can go ahead and set up a different number of bins. So let's just go back over here and go down to the size of bins, and let's just choose 15 to start with. So I'm going to go like that. I'm going to go over here and let's just get rid of the day number of year off the x-axis and then just drop this new grouping in here. So what we can see here is the size of each bin is 15. So here are the total sales for each bin of 15 different days of years. So this will go through and show me what this looks like through the entire year. I could go over here, so let's just go back over and say edit the groups. And let's just say instead of the size of bins, I want to say number of bins, and perhaps I want to make the bin count, let's just say 12 bins. Let's just go like that. So I can go like this, and now we'll see that the data has been set up differently, and I should see here that I have a dozen different bins in my data. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So here I've gone through and I have 12 different bins, and each one of these will contain a different number of data points. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this sublesson on using groupings, binnings, and clustering. In this sublesson, we're going to use AI visuals. First off, we're going to take a look at the Key Influencers visual. The Key Influencers visual helps you understand the factors that drive a metric you're interested in. It analyzes your data, ranks the factors that matter, and displays them as key influencers. The key influencers visual is a great choice if you want to see which factors affect the metric being analyzed, contrast the relative importance of these factors. So let's go out to the Power BI desktop and take a look at an example. Okay, so I have an example here of the key influencers visual. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to understand what influences sales amounts to increase. And so here what we're doing is we're analyzing the sales amount and we're trying to explain it by color. So in this case here, I say if the color is red, the average amount of sales increases by 1.22K. So when the color is red, the average sales amount is 1,221 units higher compared to all other values of color. And this influencer contains approximately 8.18% of the data. And I can go over here and take a look at this on the actual visualization. I can go down and take a look at silver here to see how this one is being influenced. And I can see that this one also has a significant influence in making sales increase. And I can see here when I hover over top of silver, it says when color is silver, the average sales amount is 1,115 units higher compared to other values. And this contains approximately 5.75% of the data. If I want, I can actually take a look at this according to our top segments. So I can see here that I've got a number of different segments in my data. And what I want to do is say when the sales amount is more likely to be high, the color is red, followed by silver, and then yellow, and then the other segments right here. So these represent the rest. So this is a really nice way to, once again, see which factors affect the metric being analyzed. And it helps to contrast the relative importance of these different factors. Okay, so next we'll take a look at the decomposition tree visual. So this enables you to visualize data across multiple dimensions. It automatically aggregates data and enables drilling down into your dimensions in any order. To use the decomposition tree visual, this requires two types of input. We require the analyze, which is the metric we'd like to analyze, and this has to be a measure or an aggregate, and explain by, which is one or more dimensions we'd like to drill down into. We can use what are called AI splits to figure out where you should look next in your data. These splits appear at the top of the list and are marked with a light bulb. The splits are there to help you find high and low values in the data automatically. We can continue taking a look at AI splits by looking at high value, which considers all available fields and determines which one to drill into to get the highest value of measure being analyzed. And the low value considers all available fields and determines which one to drill into to get the lowest value of the value being measured or analyzed. So we can lock levels on the decomposition tree. So a content creator can lock levels for report consumers. When a level is locked, it cannot be removed or changed. A consumer can explore different paths within the locked level, but they cannot change the level itself. As a creator, you can hover over existing levels to see the lock icon. You can lock as many levels as you want, but you cannot have unlocked levels preceding locked levels. So let's go out to the Power BI desktop and take a look. Okay, so I am on the Power BI desktop and I have my decomposition tree ready to go. And what I want to analyze here is sales amount. And I want to be able to explain it by sales territory country, English promotion category, and color. So let's start working our way through this analysis. So what I'm going to do here is click on this plus symbol and let's go down next to the sales territory. So this will break down the different sales territories from high to low in terms of how they are broken out. Next from this, I can then go ahead and click color. So I'll click this plus symbol and say color. And this will go ahead and start explaining how the colors break down after this dimension here. Seeing once again that red is the highest for the United States. And if I wanted to, I could take a look at Australia and see how those end up ranking out as well. I can add the last level in here. I can say English promotion category. And then I can see that the highest one is no discount versus the reseller. So that is the decomposition tree going down according to the path that I want to take it down. And we can view the highs and lows across these paths. And one last thing to mention here is if I go and this level here and put a lock on this level. Well, notice when I do that, all the locks to the left-hand side are locked up as well, so I can't go ahead and change it. If I go ahead and do this here, I can leave these ones unlocked here, or I could keep them unlocked. The big point here is that once I lock something higher, automatically all the ones down below are locked up as well. So if I go like that and click color, sales territory is locked and English promotion stays open. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're building this out. Okay, so next I'm going to go ahead and take a look at AI split. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these. I guess first I need to go ahead and unlock. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these levels, and we're going to take a different path this time. So now what I'm going to do is choose the plus symbol and take advantage of the AI split. So I'm going to go ahead and say high value here, which will then break this down into no discounts and discounts. I'll continue on that same path and say high value. Then we end up at the United States or the sales territories countries. And then we do the same thing. We'll go to high value here, and this will take us to our final level. I can alternately go down this if I just want to get rid of this as well again. And I could go down the low value path. Take a look at this. And I can continue to go low, like so. And we'll notice this is just the opposite way that the data was set up when we went the high value path, which should not be too much of a surprise. All right, so next we're going to take a look at the Q&A visual. The Q&A visual allows users to ask natural language questions and get answers in the form of a visual. Consumers can use it to quickly get answers to questions, and designers can also use it to create visuals quickly. The question box is where users type their questions and are shown suggestions to help them complete their question. A pre-populated list of questions is generally available. An icon to convert the Q&A visual into a standard visual is available. And there's an icon to open Q&A tooling, which allows designers to configure the underlying natural language engine, which we talked about in an earlier sublesson. So let's go to the Power BI desktop and take a look at this. Okay, so I am on the Power BI desktop and I have a blank page. So I'm just going to go ahead in the visualizations pane and click on the Q&A visual right here. And I'm just going to go ahead and put it in the screen here and resize it. And we can see here there are a couple of suggestions that are available to us. But maybe I want to do something a little different. I want to say show total sales, like so. And we can see that our total sales is being shown here for internet sales. And maybe I want to see this by product name. Oops, product name. So let's get that spelled properly. And we can do that, and we'll see the visualization changes itself into a visual like we see on the screen here. So at this point, once we're finished here, we can turn this Q&A result into a standard visual, or we can click on this button right here, which says we can go in and further configure the Q&A setup. Now, we talked about this in an earlier sublesson, so we're not going to go into that in any depth here. But if I wanted to, once I'm finished with this visual, I can click on turn that into a standard visual, and we'll see now that the Q&A goes away and it converted it over into a clustered bar chart. All right, so that brings us to the end of the section on using AI visuals. In this sublesson, we are going to use the forecast feature. If you have time data in your data source, you can use the forecasting feature. First off, we want to select a visual, then expand the forecast selection of the analytics pane. You can specify inputs to modify the forecast, such as forecast length or confidence interval. So let's go and take a look at the line chart we've been looking at for quite some time in our examples, and let's go ahead and apply forecasting to it. Okay, so I am on the Power BI desktop, and we can see here that I've got my line chart we've been looking at a little bit earlier. I just put it onto its own page just to give it a little more real estate to work with. So what I can see here is on the visualizations pane, I've got the spot where we can add data to our visuals, where we can go through and format our visuals. And finally, I just want to point out that we can use this analysis button to add further analysis to your visuals. So what we're interested in doing here is turning on the forecast feature down below. Now, previously I had gone in and done a little bit of formatting with this here. And so let's just go through this. So I've got the data points set up by default as my forecast. So we can do that. If I want, I can go and change this to years, quarters, months, days, hours, minutes, second, depending on the time interval I have available to us. I've got the forecast length set to 10 here. So I've got 10 data points that it's going out. I'm asking it to ignore the last 0 data points. I could go ahead and maybe add in some additional data points to ignore here if I want, which is going to change my forecast. So maybe I ignore the last one. Maybe I say ignore none, which is what I had here in the first place. Then we can go ahead and add some seasonality adjustments in here as well. And then we can decide on what the confidence level is that we want to apply to this data. So if we want 99%, there's what our forecast looks like. If we want 85% confidence, there's what our line will look like. So we can go through and change the different forecast intervals that are available to us. All right, so that's all we need to show you here on the forecast feature in the Power BI desktop. And with that, we're at the end of the sublesson. In this sublesson, we're going to create reference lines by using the Analytics pane. You can add reference lines to visuals and provide focus for important trends or insights. These can be found on the Analytics pane in the Power BI desktop and service. And just as a note, not all visuals support reference lines. Available reference lines include the x-axis constant line, a y-axis constant line, a min line, max, average, median, a percentile line, and symmetry shading. So let's go to the Power BI desktop and show this in action. Okay, so I am on my Power BI desktop, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ensure that the cluster column chart here on the visual has focus. And what I can do now that that visual has focus, I can see once again, I have my Analyze button right here, and I can see that I have a number of different lines that I can go ahead and draw on this particular visualization. So here, a constant line is value, or is a valid one, minimum, max, average, median, percentile, and error bars. So I have a number of different types of reference lines that are available on this particular visual. And if I switch now over to the line chart here, I can see that there are a number of other types of lines here. So here is where the X and Y are available to us well, plus the forecast feature, which we had discussed in a previous sublesson. So I'm going to turn my attention back over to this cluster column chart here. Let's just go ahead and say a average line. So let's go over here. I'm going to say add an average line. Well, it's called average line 1. I'm not going to give it any special name here. And we'll go like this, and I can potentially turn the data label on if I want. I can turn it off. There's some things I can do with the line itself in terms of changing it from dashed and where do I want the position to be and what color would I like this to be. So I can go ahead and do some configurations on this particular line here. I can see this is a line that represents the average number of sales per year in this particular visual. So I can go ahead and turn that off or get rid of it. Maybe I want to go through and let's just draw a constant line. Maybe I want to put a line in here, and I'm going to go ahead and put this one at, let's just say 5 million or something like that. 5, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like so. Hit enter like that, and we will see that, I'm missing some zeros there. There we go. That's better. So now I got that line sitting at $5 million. Once again, I can go through and do configurations on it. All right, so that is it on this sublesson on creating reference lines by using the Analytics pane. In this module, we'll deploy and maintain assets. Once you've created your Power BI datasets and reports, it's time to deploy them for use. In this module, you'll learn how to create workspaces in the Power BI service, which is where you deploy your Power BI artifacts. You will also learn how to connect Power BI reports to on-premise data sources in addition to configuring automatic refresh for your Power BI datasets. And finally, we'll look at row-level security, which allows you to create a report and have users only see the data that applies to them. In this lesson, we cover manage files and datasets and manage workspaces. Let us begin. This lesson focuses on the processes used to manage datasets in your Power BI environment. In this lesson, we cover how to identify when a gateway is required, configure a dataset schedule refresh, configure row-level security group membership, provide access to dataset, and manage global options for files. Let us begin. In this sublesson, we're going to identify when a gateway is required. So first off, what is a gateway? The on-premise data gateway acts as a bridge to provide quick and secure data transfer between on-premise data, i.e. data that isn't in the cloud, and several Microsoft Cloud services such as Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate. By using a gateway, organizations can keep databases and other data sources on their premise networks, yet securely use that on-premise data in cloud services. So here is a diagram indicating how the gateway works. So we can see that we, at the bottom of the screen, have on-premise data sources. The data gateway sits in the middle, and it is what allows cloud Power BI and other services to talk to the on-premise data sources in a safe and secure manner. So there are a couple of different types of gateways. There's the on-premise data gateway in standard mode. This allows multiple users to connect to multiple on-premise data sources. With a single gateway installation, you can use an on-premise data gateway with all supported services. This gateway is well suited to complex scenarios in which multiple people access multiple data sources. There is also the on-premise data gateway in personal mode, and this allows one user to connect to sources and can't be shared with others. An on-premises data gateway, personal mode, can be only used with Power BI. This gateway is well suited to scenarios in which you're the only person who creates reports and you don't need to share any data sources with others. And with that, we're at the end of the sublesson. In this sublesson, we're going to configure a dataset scheduled refresh. You can refresh datasets in the Power BI service by using the scheduled refresh feature. The following are the maximum time slots per day. So if you're using shared capacity, you can refresh up to 8 times per day. Or if you're using premium capacity, you can do it up to 48 times in a given day. The target is to initiate the refresh within 15 minutes of the scheduled time, but delays of up to 1 hour can occur if the service cannot allocate the required resources sooner. You can also perform an on-demand refresh of your dataset, and this does not affect the next scheduled refresh time. Power BI will deactivate your scheduled refreshes after 4 consecutive failures or when the service detects an unrecoverable error that requires a configuration update, such as invalid or expired credentials. After 2 months of inactivity, scheduled refreshes on your dataset are paused. A dataset is considered inactive when no user has visited any dashboard report built on the dataset. So let's go ahead and get into the Power BI service and take a look at scheduled refreshes and the on-demand refresh. So I am in my workspace here, and what I want to do is I'm going to go to the sales incremental dataset here. I'm going to click on these little ellipses, and I'm going to go to the settings. When I get in the settings, what I want to do is make sure I'm on the Datasets tab, and then come down below here to schedule refresh. So I've turned the schedule refresh on. The refresh frequency is daily. The time zone that I want to operate these refreshes in is Mountain Standard Time, and the time that I want to run this at is 7 a.m. I could go ahead and add another time if I wanted to, so I can do this up to 48 times, given the fact that I'm running this in premium capacity, but this is good enough for now. I can also send refresh failure notifications to the dataset owner or a list of contact users. So this is on the schedule refresh side. So let's actually show you where we can go in and run an on-demand refresh. So if I go over here to my sales incremental dataset within the workspace itself and click these ellipses, I can go over here to the refresh now button. If I go ahead and click that, it's going to let me know that I'm preparing for a refresh and that the on-demand refresh will occur, keeping in mind that this does not impact the 48 different refreshes that I get to run on a daily basis in this particular capacity. And now that that refresh is run, I can see that this dataset last refresh succeeded just now as I went ahead and ran this, and the next refresh is going to be tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. And I can go in here too and take a look at the on-demand refresh if I want to take a look at the refresh history in here as well. Perfect. So that is it on this sublesson on configure and schedule data refresh. In this sublesson, we're going to talk about configuring role-level security group membership. Okay, so we can add members to your data model in a number of different ways. So this work is being done in the Power BI service, keeping in mind that earlier on in the desktop, we went and set the roles up and then decided how we were going to go and filter who could see the data in a given role. So in the Power BI service, we can add a member to the role by adding individual email addresses or groups. And we can use the following groups to set up role level security. Either we can use a distribution group, a mail enable group, or a security group. But Office 365 groups are not supported and cannot be added to any roles. So let's go out to the Power BI service and show you where we get this set up. Okay, so I am in the Power BI service now, and I can see that I'm in a workspace called AdventureWorks Demo, and I've got two data sets that are of concern here. So I want to take a look at sales RLS, which is for role level security, and sales DRLS, which is for dynamic role level security. So what I'm going to do is there's three little ellipses in the line here, and if I click on that, I can go down here to security. And here's now where I can enter in either the individual email addresses or the groups we talked about a few moments ago here. So what I can do is if I wanted, I could actually add them in here. But first I actually want to go ahead and test this out. So I'm going to click this test as role to mimic being part of the EU and UK manager role. And once again, just like down the desktop, I can only see those three values. So if I want now, I can go back over to my security page and I can do the same thing with Pacific Manager and go ahead and test it out that way. Or like I said, I could start adding the different users in here, click the add button and save it, and then we would have a model that has the security implemented the way that we wanted. Okay, so let's now go over and take a look at the dynamic role level security model. So I'm going to go back over to my summary page here for the workspace itself, and I'm going to go to the sales DRLS. I'm going to click on the three ellipses here. It's going to be the same thing. I'm going to go over to security, and this time I don't actually have to do anything in here, but I just want to mimic what will happen if I click on these three little dots and say test as role. So right now, I didn't actually add anything in there, but it picked up on the fact that I'm logged in with chris.sorensen@iterationinsights.com. And if I go over to country, if you recall from a previous sublesson, these are the only three countries that I can see if I was logged in as this. Now, right now, I would technically not have to do anything with this, but right now I'm the owner and administrator of this workspace here. So by default, I'm actually able to see all of this data. If I was logged into this with a viewer role, I would not actually have to do anything in the security settings. It would just pick up on the fact that I am chris.sorensen@iterationinsights.com and only show me the data that I have access to. But you just have to keep in mind in this model here, I've got it set up, but I'm also logged in as the administrator of this workspace, so I can see all the data. If I was logged in as a viewer, and we'll talk about the different workspace roles in another sublesson, I would only see the data that I should see. Okay, so to wrap up, some role-level security group membership limitations and considerations. So first, if you previously defined roles and rules in the Power BI service, you must recreate them in the Power BI desktop. Keeping in mind the initial roles and rules are set up in the desktop and the assignments are done in the Power BI service. Only import and direct query connections are supported. Live connections to analysis services are handled in the actual model itself. And finally, users have the contributor, member, or admin role in a workspace will see all data regardless of role level security. And I demonstrated that a few moments ago when I went in and showed you what would show up if I was not a member of one of these roles here and I was the admin role. I would only see a subsection of that data, but given I'm a member, or sorry, not a member, an administrator of that role, I was able to see everything. So that demonstrates the very last point there. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this sublesson on role level security implementation. In this sublesson, we're going to talk about providing access to datasets. So in the service, when you open the dataset catalog from a new workspace experience, The dataset catalog shows datasets that are in your My Workspace and in other new Workspace experience workspaces. Dataset creators can control who has access to their data by using the build permissions. When you give users build permissions, they can build new content on your dataset. Users also need build permissions to work with data outside of Power BI. And for example, if they want to export underlying data, if they want to build new content on datasets such as Analyze in Excel, or to access the data via the XML endpoint. So let's quickly show you what this looks like in the Power BI service. Okay, so I'm in the Power BI service, and if I have the navigation pane open, so right now I have the navigation pane closed and I open it back up again, I can see this section here called Datasets. So if I click on that, I can go and explore the datasets in my organization to find data that suits my needs. So I can go through here and take a look and see what datasets are available for use within my organization. And if I just take a look at across all the different datasets, this view shows me all. This will show me the recent datasets that I have worked with. And this will show you the ones that are my datasets. So I got a few different ways to take a look at this. And the two that we've done fairly recently are Sales RLS and Sales Dynamic Role Level Security, or DRLS. And we can see there's a few other things that we're going to talk about in other sub-lessons here. We got endorsement. So do we want to provide an endorsement level to this? Do we want to promote it or certify it? It shows me who the owner is, what workspace this is part of, when it was refreshed, and then sensitivity labels, which we'll talk about in another sub-lesson as well. So I got a few different things we can do, but let's talk about applying the build permissions. So if I click on these straight ellipses right here, I can go down to this drop-down box here that says Manage Permissions. If I click on that, I can go in here, and here's where I can add additional users. So if I want, I can click on Add User, and let's just add in one of my other administrative users here. So let's go ahead and do that. And here's where I can say, do I want to allow recipients to share this data set out to others? I'm going to click that off because I don't want. Do I want to allow recipients to build content within the data associated with this data set? I want to allow that to happen. And do I want to send an email notification off to that person and then send an optional message? I'm just going to click that off as well. So if I click this and say grant access, we're going to see now that another user called Chris Sorensen, this is an admin account I have, that is set up here. It now has read and build permissions. So if I click on these little ellipses here, here's where I can manage this. I can add reshare, so I can now say I can reshare that data set out to others. Maybe I want to remove the build permissions, or maybe I just want to remove access altogether. So if I say remove the build permissions, then I'm left with just read permissions on the data set. And if I want to completely remove access, I can say remove access, and then that's going to go ahead and remove access completely for that particular user. Okay, so that's all we really wanted to show you on managing dataset permissions. With that, we're at the end of the sub-lesson. In this sub-lesson, we are going to manage global options for files. So the first global option we're going to talk about is the auto date time. The purpose of this option is to support convenient time intelligence reporting based on date columns loaded into a data model. Specifically, it allows report authors using your data model to filter, group, and drill down by using calendar time periods, which are years, quarters, months, and days. What's important is that you don't need to explicitly develop these time intelligence capabilities. Another key global option are the preview features. These are features that are available to you to try in your current desktop release. They might change or be removed in future releases. And finally, we'll look at privacy levels. In Power BI Desktop, privacy levels specify an isolation level that defines the degree that one data source will be isolated from the other data sources. Although a restrictive isolation level blocks information from being exchanged between data sources, it might reduce functionality and impact performance. So let's go to the Power BI Desktop and show you where we can make these settings. Okay, so I have the Power BI Desktop open here, and I'm just going to show you where you can go and make these settings. Right, so we're going to go to File. We can go down to Options and Settings, click on Options, And what we're going to notice here once this dialog box opens up, that we have two areas here. We have global settings that can be made to all Power BI files that you work with. So these are global settings. And we can do settings that are based on the current file only. So not for all other Power BI files which you may bring onto your machine. Okay, so the first one we're going to take a look at is time intelligence. It shows up under the data load. And we'll see here that in this model, time intelligence is turned on. So automatically, we will have time intelligence hierarchies built out for us. So ideally, we actually go ahead and turn this one off and control hierarchies on our own. But for now, we're going to leave that one alone. The next one we talked about was preview features. So our preview features only shows up under the global area. And here are currently in the April 2022 desktop release, all the preview features that I have turned on. And I always turn my preview features on because I'm always looking at the newest things that are happening in Power BI to stay one step ahead of things. So I've got all my preview features turned on. There is also privacy here where we can go ahead and set our privacy levels. You'll notice that the data load where we set time intelligence and the privacy levels can be set at the current file level as well. So if we want, we can have different settings for each individual Power BI file we work on inside this current file. But the preview features only exist up in global. All right, so we can see there's also a number of other options and settings in here. You can go and review these at your leisure. There's lots of them in here. But for now, these cover the three major areas where we can go in and set options. All right, with that, we're at the end of the sublesson. This lesson focuses on the processes used to create and manage workspaces in your Power BI environment. In this lesson, we'll cover how to create and configure a workspace, assign workspace roles, configure and update a workspace app, publish, import, or update assets in a workspace, apply sensitivity labels to workspace content, configure subscription and data alerts, and promote or certify Power BI content. Let us begin. In this sublesson, we're going to look at creating and configuring a workspace. So some of the mandatory settings when creating a workspace are, first, we must give the workspace a unique name. And when we go ahead and create an app, if we eventually do from the workspace, by default, it will have the same name and icon as the workspace. And you can change both when you actually go ahead and create an app. Some optional settings for the workspace are you can upload a workspace image, you can specify a workspace OneDrive, you can add a contact list for the workspace itself, you can allow contributors to update the app, you can assign the workspace to a premium capacity, and you can connect a workspace to an Azure Data Lake Gen 2 storage account. Some workspace access that we'll take a look at here and go into more detail in a later sublesson is you can allow people to be either an admin, a member, a contributor, or viewer of that workspace. And as mentioned, we're going to go into depth on what all these look like in a later sublesson. So I am over in the Power BI service now, and what I'm going to do here is just click on the little arrow next to the workspaces here, and in here I can go down to the bottom and say create a workspace. So this is going to bring me to the dialog box where I can say, what do I want to call this? I'm just going to say new workspace or something like that, because I'm not actually going to go ahead and create this. New workspace. And what I can do is then go and put a description in to this right here. Then I can go ahead down to the advanced and I can set up a contact list here. And right now the contact list is just the workspace admins. And what this does here is it gives us a list of people that will receive a notification whenever there's issues occurring in the actual workspace. The next thing that we can do here is add an optional Workspace OneDrive. And what the Workspace OneDrive feature allows you to do is configure a Microsoft 365 group whose OneDrive shared library is available to Workspace users. And you create this group outside of Power BI first in OneDrive. All right, so going down a little bit further here, we can choose the licensing mode for this workspace. So I can set it up as a standard workspace, or in my case here, I'm going to build this out as a premium per user workspace. We can go ahead and assign this to a large data set format or a small data set format. We talked about that in another sublesson. And from here, we could also develop a template app if we wanted to. And template apps are developed for sharing outside your organization. A template app workspace will be created for developing and releasing the app itself. And down below here, as we mentioned before, we can allow contributors to update the app for this workspace if we wanted to. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and create this new workspace anyhow. So let's just go ahead and save it. We will see that we have the new workspace set up. So what I'm going to do here is just go over to here, and we'll go and find our new workspace here. And what I'm going to do is click on this and say Workspace Settings. Now we can see a couple additional things. So before, we could go ahead and upload an image now for this workspace. We can then go ahead and take a look in the advanced, which is the same as we had before. Over in the premium area, we can go in here and change this to large data set if we wanted to. And in Azure Connections, we could go ahead and set this up and connect it to an Azure Data Lake Gen 2 storage account if we wanted to. Okay, so let's just go ahead and cancel that. And we'll go back over here, and let's just quickly show you one more thing here, is if I go back to my new workspace and click on this little button here, I can click on Workspace Access, which is where I'm going to go ahead and add in either administrators, members, contributors, and viewers, and we'll talk about that in another sublesson. Okay, so that is it on creating and configuring a workspace. In this sublesson, we're going to assign workspace roles. And at the workspace, as we saw in a previous sublesson, we can grant one of three levels of access: admin, member, contributor, and viewer. So let's start from the bottom up, because as we work our way from the viewer up to the contributor will inherit all of the permissions of the viewer. So let's just walk our way up the permission levels. So the viewer role can view and interact with an item. You're able to read data stored in workspace data flows. The contributor role is a role that enables us to feature dashboards and reports on a colleague's home. We can create, edit, and delete content in the workspace. We can publish reports to the workspace and delete content. We can create a report in another workspace based on a data set in the workspace that we have the contributor role. We can copy a report. We can create goals based on a data set in the workspace. We can schedule data refreshes via the on-premise gateway. We can modify gateway connection settings, and we can update an app if we are allowed to do so. The member role allows us to add members or others with lower permissions. We can publish, unpublish, and change permissions for an app. We can update an app. We can share an item or share an app, allow others to reshare items. We can feature apps on colleagues' home pages, and we can manage dataset permissions. And finally, the admin role, we can update and delete the workspace, add and remove people, including other admins, and we can allow contributors to update the app for the workspace. All right, so those are the 4 different levels of permissions that we can have in a workspace, and that brings us to the end of this sublesson. In this sublesson, we're going to configure and update a workspace app. An app is a method of packaging official content for distribution to a broad audience. You create apps in workspaces where you can collaborate on Power BI content with your colleagues. Then you can publish the finished app to large groups of people in your organization. Ways to get a new app in the Power BI service are the following. You can get it from the Power BI app marketplace. You can get a direct link to an app that you've received from an app designer, or an app designer in your organization can install the app automatically in your Power BI account. And ways to get a new app in the Power BI mobile. We can only install an app from a direct link, or if the app designer installs the app automatically. Every now and again, we need to update our apps. So if you got the app from your organization, update to the new version is entirely transparent. You don't have to do anything once you have the app. If you got the template from AppSource, the next time you open the app, you'll see a notification banner. The notification lets you know that you have a new version of the app available that you need to go and get. So some limitations and considerations. If you have a free license, you can open apps that are stored in premium capacity and have been shared with you. If you have a pro license, you can open apps that have been shared with you. right, so let's go into the Power BI service and show you what this looks like. Okay, so I'm in the Power BI service in a workspace called AdventureWorks Demo. And right now I've gone through and included a number of different artifacts inside the app. So I've included a report called Demo. I've included a dashboard called Sales Analysis and a report called Sales Map. So these three have been included in the app. I've excluded a report called Sales Dynamic Row Level Security and one called Sales Row Level Security. So I don't need those two reports brought into my app. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm just going to go to the Update App button here, and I give my app a name. I have a description for that app. I can actually put in a support site where users can go and find help. I can go ahead and upload a logo to this if I want. I can provide a theme color, and then I can provide contact information for users. From a navigation perspective, I can turn the new navigation builder on, and I have my app set up so that sales analysis is first in navigation, then demo, then the actual sales map itself. So I can go through here and see the name of the dashboard. It's called Sales Analysis. There's a link to the dashboard. I can go down to the report called Demo, and the same thing here. And I can go to the sales map and take a look at this as well. There are also some advanced features I can do in here, so I can set up a default navigation width if I wanted to for any of these things. Next thing I'm going to do is go into the permissions. So I can provide access to this to specific individuals or groups. And what I can also do here is allow everyone who has access to the app to allow users to connect to the app's underlying datasets using the build permissions. And I can allow users to make a copy of reports in this app. Maybe I don't want to turn that one on. I'm going to go ahead and click it off. Or I could allow users to share the app and app's underlying datasets using the share permissions. Once again, I have that one checked off here. Okay, so once I have that all set up, I can go to this button here that's called Update App. And what I'm going to do here is go ahead and click that button, and we can see that it has been successfully published. So I'm going to click on this and say, go to the app. So I'm going to actually go directly into the app itself. And we can see here now that I have a couple of different things. I've got the sales analysis dashboard. I've got the demo report here, which is the report looks like this. And I've got a sales map as well. So I've got a couple different ways that I can navigate around things. You'll notice here that things are a little bit more boxed in for this application here for my end users. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this sublesson. In this sublesson, we're going to look at publishing, importing, or updating assets in a workspace. And it is very common over the course of development to republish a Power BI desktop file into a workspace. The dataset in your Power BI site is replaced with the updated dataset from the Power BI desktop file. When you make changes to a dataset or are considering making changes, it is important to be able to assess the impact those changes will have. Dataset impact analysis provides you with information that can help you make the assessment. So I am over here on my Power BI desktop, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to publish this desktop file here into my workspace where I already have a demo dataset and a demo report. So I'm just going to click on my workspace. I'm going to say select. Then what's going to happen is it's going to ask me, do I want to replace this dataset? It says I already have a dataset named demo in Power BI, and replacing this dataset may impact 2 reports and 1 dashboard. If I want, I can view the impact of this content in the Power BI service itself. So here I can go click on View Impact, and that will take me into the Power BI service where I can take a look at what is happening with this data set itself and all the downstream components. So I can go in here and close this off and take a look at, all right, well, what are the different artifacts that are in here that may be impacted by this change? I go and take a quick glance at this thing and I know that I'm going to be okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back out to my Power BI desktop file here, and I'm just going to say replace. So it's going to go ahead and replace this data set up in the Power BI service. We can see that that publish has now been successful. So let's go into the demo.pbx in the Power BI service. So I'm going to click on that, and this will take us back into my workspace and show us exactly what has changed since we have done our last publish. And I can see here in the Power BI service, this isn't exactly what I wanted to publish. It looks like we have some filters that were applied in my Power BI desktop file. I have this page 1, which I don't want to show. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back over to my Power BI service now, and let's go ahead and clean this up. I want to hide page number 1 right here. So I'll go ahead and hide that. And let's go ahead and leave everything like this within the actual data set itself. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this back up. I'm going to say save. I'm going to push this into my workspace. And once again, it's going to let me know. I'm just going to say replace, let the publish process happen. We can see that it's successfully published now. So I'm going to go into my demo.pbx in the Power BI service here. And we can see now that it looks like we have it being filtered. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to click on the reset to default, go like so, and we're going to see now the dashboard has been brought back to the default which I had just published, because somebody was already in there, likely myself, and had played around with some of the filter context in the interim. So now there we go. So now the dashboard is published. I can see that my page number 1 is gone and it is hidden, and now this is what everything looks like. All right, so that brings us then the sub-lesson on publish, import, or update assets in a workspace. In this sub-lesson, we're going to look at applying sensitivity labels to workspace content. Sensitivity labels on your reports, dashboards, datasets, data flows, and PBX files can guard your sensitive content against unauthorized data access and leakage. Labeling your data correctly with sensitivity labels ensures that only authorized people can access your data. To apply sensitivity labels, you must have a Power BI Pro or Premium per user license and edit permissions on the content. You must also belong to a security group that has permissions to apply sensitivity labels. Sensitivity labeling does not affect access to content. Access to content in the service is managed solely by Power BI permissions. For sensitivity labels to be used in Power BI, they must be enabled on the tenant for the organization. And an Azure Information Protection Premium P1 or Premium P2 license is required to apply or view sensitivity labels in Power BI. You can tag your dashboards with classifications defined by your company's IT department, so everyone viewing the content will have the same level of understanding around the sensitivity of the data. Data classification is set up by the global admin for your organization. Each classification has a name and shorthand tag. You can optionally add a URL that contains more information about your organization's classification guidelines and usage requirements. You need to decide which is the default classification type. If data classification is turned on for your company, all dashboards start out with a default classification type. As a dashboard owner, you can change the classification to match your dashboard's security level. Some limitations and considerations. If you turn data classification off, none of the tags are remembered. You will need to start over if you decide to turn it back on later. If you remove a classification type, any dashboard assigned the remove classification type will be assigned back to the default until the owner goes and sets it again. And if you change the default, all dashboards that weren't already assigned a classification type by the owner will change to the new default. So these are some really important things to understand and remember when you are dealing with sensitivity labels. All right, so that brings us to the end of this sublesson. When configuring subscriptions, we can tell Power BI how often you want to receive the emails, either daily, weekly, or when the data refreshes. We can even set a specific time for Power BI to send the emails to have it run immediately. In all, you can set up to 24 different subscriptions per report or dashboard. Some limitations and considerations. Creating a subscription for yourself requires a Power BI Pro or Premium per user license. Subscribing others is only available to the dashboard or report owners who have a Power BI Pro or Premium per user license. Next up, what are data alerts? Data alerts are used to notify you when data in your dashboard changes beyond limits you set. You can set data alerts on tiles in your My Workspace. You can set alerts if someone shares a dashboard that's in premium capacity. And if you have a Power BI Pro license, you can set alerts on tiles in other workspaces too. Alerts can be set on tiles pinned from report visuals and only on gauges, KPIs, and cards. Alerts can be set on visuals created from streaming data sets that you pin from a report to a dashboard. Alerts cannot be set on streaming tiles created directly on the dashboard. For more sophisticated alerting, consider using Power Automate. And there are 3 ways to manage your alerts: from the dashboard tile, from the Power BI settings menu, or on a tile in the Power BI mobile apps. Some alert considerations and limitations. Alerts aren't supported for card tiles with date time measures. Alerts work only with numeric data types. Alerts work only on refreshed data. They won't work on static data. Alerts work only on streaming datasets if you build a KPI, card, or gauge report visual and then pin that visual to the dashboard. So let's go out to Power BI and take a quick look. So I am in the Power BI service here. I just want to briefly show you where you can subscribe. So right here, I am in a dashboard. I can click on subscribe here. And then here's where I can add a new subscription and go in and make some of the settings. So I can set who I want the subscription to go to, the subject, an optional message, and then what is the frequency of this? So daily, hourly, weekly, or monthly. And I can go through and configure the weekdays, the scheduled time, the start date and end dates. I can also include access to this dashboard and a link to the dashboard in Power BI. So I can go ahead and add a number of subscriptions here. I can also do the same down in the report. So if I go down to the report, I can open this up here and we can see the same type of subscription module over here in the actual report itself. All right, so let's go back to the dashboard here and just show you where we can create alerts. So on this particular tile here, because this is a KPI tile, I can click these 3 ellipses here and go manage alerts. And here's where I can go ahead and add an alert rule. So I may want an alert to come to me when the total sales for the organization goes over $16 million. I go ahead and give the alert a title and I set the rules up. Do I want it to give me an alert when I go above or below a certain threshold? And I can set the maximum notification frequency, at most every 24 hours, at most once an hour. And I can also ask it to send me an email as well. So here's where I can go in and add my alerts. I'm not going to go ahead and save that. All right, so that brings us to the end of this sub-lesson on configure subscriptions and data alerts. In this sub-lesson, we're going to promote or certify Power BI content. So what is endorsement in Power BI? Endorsement enables datasets to be endorsed with a goal to minimize the number of datasets and drive towards a central version of truth. Power BI provides 2 ways to endorse your datasets: promotion and certification. Promotion is a way to highlight content you think is valuable and worthwhile for others to use. It encourages the collaborative use and spread of content within an organization. Any content owner, as well as member with right permissions on the workspace where the content is located, can promote the content. Certification means the content meets the organization's quality standards and can be regarded as reliable, authoritative, and ready for use across the organization. Only authorized reviewers, defined by the Power BI administrator, can certify content. So here is a list of what can be endorsed. We can endorse datasets, data flows, reports, and apps. So let's go out to Power BI and take a look. Okay, so I am here in the Power BI service and I am in a workspace, and I can see here that I've got a number of different objects in this workspace. I've got my data set, I've got a report, and I've got a data flow built on top of this. I can see over here in the endorsement section that this sales report has been promoted, this one's been certified, and this product roll-up table has been promoted as well. So to show you where we can go ahead and control that, I'm just going to go ahead and click these ellipses right here, go to settings, and over here I can go over into this and find my endorsement discovery, and here's where I can go through and make my individual settings on this particular object. All right, so that's all we really need to know about the endorsement process in Power BI, and with that we are at the end of this sub-lesson. All right, we covered lots of ground, and I hope by taking this video preparation course, you now feel more confident in your ability to sit and pass the exam. And I bet that along the way you learned a few things about Power BI you never knew. So let's recap what we covered. In Module 1, we looked at the work that typically needs to be done to prepare the data prior to loading to your data model. We first looked at getting data from different sources, and next we reviewed how to clean, transform, and load the data. Here we started by profiling data to help you better understand the characteristics of your data, so you could better understand how to approach cleaning and transforming prior to loading it to the data model. In Module 2, we looked at what it takes to design and develop a data model that is ready for end-user self-service consumption. This included defining the tables and their structures, choosing appropriate granularity levels, and building hierarchies. Next, we looked at creating model calculations by using DAX. And finally, we wanted to ensure we're doing our work in a manner that optimized model performance. In Module 3, we looked at creating reports, which involved choosing appropriate visualizations that are added and formatted to assist in telling meaningful stories on top of our data. We then created dashboards that can be used to spot trends or insights at a glance. Next, we looked at techniques that can be used to enrich reports for usability by reviewing various navigation features. And finally, we looked at how to identify patterns and trends. And finally, in Module 4, we reviewed how to deploy and maintain assets by first considering options for managing files and datasets, and lastly, managing workspaces themselves. Well, that is it. Once again, I hope you now feel more prepared and confident to sit and pass the PL-300 exam. So with that, thanks for watching and good luck.